Good afternoon, all of you.
Good afternoon, all of them.
Good afternoon, all of them.
Good afternoon.
স্যার এসে গেছেন, আমাদের রিসোর্স পারসন এসে গেছেন। আমরা একদম অন টাইম স্টার্ট করে দিতে পারি। Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. So, good afternoon to all. I'm Indrani Chakraborty, Head and Assistant Professor, Department of English, Prabhu Jagatbandhu College. I cordially invite you in this Monday National Level Student Webinar on Understanding the Theatre of the Absurd. I request our respected Principal, Dr. Subrata Kumar Ray, to welcome our delegates and participants with his address. Over to you, sir. Sir, can you hear me? Sir has joined with us. I've seen him. Hello, sir. Sir, are you speaking? We cannot hear you. Sumit, can you hear, sir?
No, we can't hear him. Perhaps sir has left.
No, sir, I didn't leave. Sir is here. I can see him.
Yes, sir, sir is here. I can also see him.
Yes.
Then should we
I
call?
think he's trying to get connected and having some problem. He's in the college. Hello, sir. Can you connect? Should I ask Colin to help you? Sir's mic is on. Here is sir. Okay. We have him with us. Yes, he's getting ready. Sir, please adjust the camera. You're not visible completely. Yes, sir. Now you're visible. I think he's having some technical problem. Please don't get disheartened, our audience. These things are normal in a webinar, unfortunate but average. I hope sir will be very soon connected with us. Yeah, I'm এটা চলাই
ঠিক আছে, থাক। Hello,
Hi sir, you're audible. Sir, please.
I'm audible now. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir, would you please kindly adjust the camera? We cannot see you
Adjust
completely.
the camera. eh?
Yes, sir. Now
Now
it's
okay?
okay. Yes, sir. Now
Yes,
it's okay.
sir.
Okay.
Sir, I have announced that you will give the welcome address. If you please continue with the welcome address.
May I start now? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
May I start now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You start. Please start.
Uh, Good afternoon, everybody. So today is an important day for the history. You may say the for our college. It is a very important day. I mean, I think remarkable day also. Our Department of English, headed by Professor Indrani Chakraborty and other professors of this department, Professor Sumit Kumar Baur, Professor Shormishta Datta Mandal, Professor Soumyajyoti Banerjee, Professor Mukherjee. I mean, her name is, I
Show me.
think,
Show
Mukherjee.
me. Show me.
Soumi Mukherjee, Soumyajyoti Mukherjee.
Yes, sir.
I think Professor Ghosh. Ghosh means Subhita Brata Ghosh, and and others of that department. So today's webinar is actually organized by the Department of English, Prabhu Jagatbandhu College, in association or in collaboration with the IQAC of our college. The IQAC coordinator is Dr. Arnav Gupta. So I welcome and I congratulate also the Department of English, and side by side I welcome all the participants, I mean, of our college and also from other colleges and the universities, including our universities, the affiliating university, the Calcutta University. So not only this, I heartily welcome, warm welcome to Professor Anindo Sen, Department of English, Assam University, Silchar. So it is situated in the northeastern region of our country. So we are proud of him, Professor Anindo Sen from Assam University. So due to his presence, and not only the presence but also delivering the lecture, our webinar has become the national level webinar. So I think maybe some students and the professors of that university, Assam University, will also participate here. I welcome them all. So I welcome also the members of the IQAC. I think all will enjoy the today's webinar, national level webinar. Question is why? Answer is, we are always actually our inquisitiveness and we are pursuing everything. Pursuing means that we are in inquisitiveness of our mind. Always we are with suppose the teaching community, the students community, or always in the learning mode to know the new things. So today's topic of the webinar is the theater of absurd. I am not the man of the English literature, though I love English, of course, because it is a language through which we have to communicate to the not only at the international level, but also to the national level also. in our country. Our country is a there is a the multi language, so we need the English for communication. And today's webinar is what I have come to know, that not only for the professors, staff, or and the staff of our college and other colleges and university, but particularly I congratulate, I heartily welcome of our students, not only from our college, but also from the other colleges and the universities, for whom actually this program, this webinar will be, I think, very, I think it is a glorious day. The students will participate, so I congratulate them, I welcome them. So welcoming all, and I think from the lecture of Professor Anindya Sen, we shall learn the new things. And also I particularly, not particular, but actually congratulate the Department of English, Prabhu Jagatbandhu College, and of course the IQAC, led by Dr. Arnav Gupta, and the Department of English, led by Professor Indrani Chakraborty, to organize such a webinar in this very moment. So I welcome all. Please enjoy. And I think particularly the students, I am just telling to you, instructing you, just if any question arises, please ask to the speaker. Okay? Because it is the high time for your life that you are getting this opportunity, and it will never come back. So this opportunity should be taken by particularly the students and maybe for the others. So welcoming all. Thank you. Thank you very much to Professor Indrani Chakraborty and Dr. Arnav Gupta. So I welcome all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your generous encouragement. Now I request Dr. Arnav Gupta, Coordinator IQSC, Prabhu Jagatbandhu College, to give an address. Over to you, Arnav.
Okay, thank you, Indrani. So, first of all, respected principal sir, respected professors from the Department of English, respected Professor Anindya Sen from Assam University, I would like to congratulate all of you for this seminar, Understanding the Theatre of Absurd. So, few days back when Indrani told me to say something about the seminar of theatre of absurd, being a man of mathematics, I was a little bit confused, but I have some, I have some queries about this understanding the theatre of absurd in English literature, and with the help of Wikipedia or from several search engines, I have managed to write a write-up on the understanding the theatre of absurd. And what I wrote, please excuse me if I am wrong. So what I wrote or what I understand about the theatre of absurd is that the theatre of absurd is a post-Second World War designation for particular plays written by number of European playwrights in the late 1950s. What I found in the from the search engine, and the plays focus largely on ideas of existentialism and express what happens when human existence lacks meaning or purpose and communication breaks down. And this type of play is typically round shape with the finishing point the same as the starting point. Some of the theatre of absurd plays are Jean Genet's The Balcony, Pinter's The Homecoming, Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. It aims to shock its audience out of complacency to bring it face to face with the hard facts of the human situation as these writers see it. For us, the theater of absurd is meaningless, totally meaningless for us, this theater of absurd, but cliches and stereotypes. But for the absurdist, the futility of a search for meaning in a universe devoid of God or meaning. So, with few such words, I hope we can achieve a fruitful seminar, a fruitful discussion from this understanding of theater of absurd, especially from our research person, Professor Anindra Sen from the Assam University. And I would also like to tell that our students should ask some questions to the speakers so that it would be clear to all of us about uh, this theater of absurd, this understanding the theater of absurd. So again, I am congratulating all of you and I wish a grand success for this webinar. And thank you, Indrani. Thank you for giving me opportunity to say something about this topic. On behalf of IQSC, again, I congratulate. I am thankful to Professor Indrani Chakraborty, to all the faculty members from the Department of English. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Aurobda. Now we come to our technical session. Before that, I should like to congratulate Aurobda in this very few time. He has managed to learn something from his resources and he has given us an idea already. So anyway, thank you very much, Aurobda. So to our
Again,
technical
I am telling I am a man from mathematics, so
yes, he's
just
from
excuse
mathematics.
me.
Yes, it's
I
really
just
congrats.
I have some queries. That's why I learned from the several
Sure,
searches.
sure. I hope we'll be able to satisfy your queries. So we start our technical session. I'm very happy to introduce our resource person, Professor Anindra Sen, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Assam University, Silchar. He teaches literary theory, modernism, postmodernism, and 20th century fiction. His area of interest is contemporary science fiction and fantasy. He is involved in theatre in many forms and varieties within and outside the academia. He organizes and conducts a theatre workshop. He is proud to refer himself as a theatre worker. What connects him more intrinsically with our theme today is his philosophical interest in existentialism and absurdism. I heartily welcome Professor Sen to deliver the keynote address to a very eager audience. Over to you, Professor Sen.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, yeah. Uh, Thank you, Professor Indrani Chakraborty. Uh, um, it is an honor. Thank you, the Department of English, Prabhu Jagatbandhu College, Honorable Principal Sir, Dr. Arnav Gupta, IQSC. It is an honor to be with you today, and this is uh, actually something that, as Professor Indrani Chakraborty knows very well, interests me because I love nothing better than talking to students, interacting with students. So I understand that quite a few of my colleagues are also present here in the Department of English, Prabhu Jagatbandhu College, and some other people who are probably research scholars and etc. And you, all of you, probably have a fair idea of the theatre of the absurd and its history and its development. Uh, I would like to apologize beforehand that I will probably not be speaking to you directly because you are not my primary target audience here. So I will rather be talking to the students. So if I sound at any point of time uh, if I am repeating what you already know, please forgive me. Uh, I will just. How much time do I have?
You have half an hour to 40 minutes.
Half an hour. Half an hour. Okay, let's try half an hour. I will try and attempt a brief introduction to how we arrived at this point, to this point when European playwrights, American playwrights, uh, all over the world started writing a particular genre, a particular kind of play, based on a particular philosophy, which later came to be known as existentialism. Uh, the question, issue is where to start. The question is how did we arrive here? So I will let's start from the beginning. Try and start from the beginning, and maybe we'll be able to place all the narratives, all the plays that we are acquainted with. Uh, if we can manage to form a general theoretical framework of the theater of the action. So all of this starts with the three primary metaphysical questions. Uh, Humankind, as long as we know the history of human thought, have, we have been obsessed with these three questions, and every thought attempt, every religion, every ideology has always been directed towards answering these three basic questions. The three questions are: who am I, where am I, and what am I doing here? So it's a question about identity, it's a question about purpose, it's a question about our role in the scheme of things, our role in this entire cosmic scheme of things. Every religion that you can think of, every ideological position that we can think of, can be basically deconstructed to to an attempt to answer these three questions, and they obviously answer them very differently. For instance, Christianity will tell you that you are God's creation, made in God's image, etc., etc. You have been um, thrown out of the Garden of Eden because of the sins of your forefathers, Adam and Eve, and you are now waiting for the end, when the day of judgment will come, and all of us will be judged by God and sent to either hell or heaven according to the kind of way we have lived. Hinduism will, of course, explain it differently. So you are that part of that immortal soul, Param Brahma, but you are stuck in this cycle of birth and rebirth. Uh, and the whole purpose of human life is to find moksha or nirvana, and free yourself, free yourself as in free your soul from this cycle of birth and rebirth, which is about birth, death, and suffering, and go back to that Parabrahma. Return to the source. Ideologies also, different ideologies will tell you what is your job in this world, who you are, and what should be the purpose of your existence. For instance, Something like nationalism will tell you that you are an Indian and your job is to serve India and die for this country, die for these people. Something like Marxism will define you based on your class position and will give you a purpose, an objective, mm, like the whole idea of human life should be to try and establish an egalitarian society, a classless society, etc., etc. So this is the basic idea. So the three metaphysical questions: who am I, where am I, and what am I doing here? Towards the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, new answers, a few new answers to these questions started arriving. Nietzsche, you all have heard about Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the greatest philosophers of the last century, famously announced that God is dead. This death of God is an important mark. It means that it does not literally mean that God was alive and he has now died or she has now died. It literally means that we needed God earlier, and now, living in the 20th century, in this modern world, we no longer have any need of God. But this removal of God, this erasure of God, creates a vacuum, because as you understand that we have lived, human beings, we have lived for centuries and centuries, millennia after millennia, justifying all our actions with reference to this one person, God. And you can call him Allah, you can call him Param Brahma or Kali or whatever, but all our actions are justified in the name. So we distinguish between good and evil, right and wrong, what is true and what is false, with reference to God, with reference to particular books, Holy Bible or the Quran, etc., etc., or certain philosophies. This basic belief in God, this basic framework, we call this idea of God, we call this the transcendental signified. It can be once again God, Param Brahma, or anything. Something which stands outside this system, something which is outside life and death, something which is outside this cosmos. And therefore, with reference to that point, that transcendental signified, we can try and we can basically understand our who we answer those three questions, our position. So the death of God leaves a vacuum. Interestingly, this is not the first time we are imagining a world without God. Nietzsche is the one who is announcing it, that it is no longer necessary in our time. But such thoughts have been there throughout human history, throughout the history of human thought, human thinking, human ideas. It can be, you can go back, we can go back to previous philosophers, many of which were actually Christian theologists. Kierkegaard, Schopenhauer, Gadamer, just names, not very important at this point, but who doubted the truth about God. Agnostics. We can go back to Shakyamuni, Gautam Buddha, the enlightened one, talking in 5th century BC. And when the enlightened one is asked that particular question, so is there a God? Shakyamuni answers, I do not know. I do not know. So it is not something which happened in the 20th century. The thought was there, but what happened in the 20th century is that this idea of a godless world, this idea of a world without heaven and hell, this idea of a world where we can no longer refer to an external signified like God, transcendental signified, and figure out what is right and what is wrong and what is good and what is bad, uh, that snowballed in the 20th century. That is what happened in the 20th century. The Jewish people, uh, Protestants, Christian Protestants, they have they have a continuous history of this, of doubting this notion that whether all of this has any purpose, what are we basically looking for? We are basically looking for salvation, right? So we try to believe in a heaven, we try to believe in eternal life, we try to believe in Param Brahma, basically to rationalize death, basically to rationalize suffering. All these constructs, Param Brahma hoke, ba death hoke, ba heaven hoke, ba paradiso, purgatorio hoke, are attempts to believe that this is not the end, that this is not the end of it all. There is something beyond this. There is something beyond this life. There is an eternal life. There is a chance that we will go back and meet Param Brahma, etc., etc. So when that is taken away, when that belief, that faith is taken away, is removed from the equation, we are left with this world, we are left with here and now, we are left with death, we are left with suffering, which all of a sudden, death, suffering, birth, all these things, all of a sudden become completely meaningless, completely absurd. So what is the point of all this suffering? So what is the point if there is no life beyond death, if there is no eternal life? What is the point of it all? Why are we struggling? Why are we even trying to be good? If there is no reward, if there is no, karma phal, why are we even trying to be good? So what is the point? That is the purposelessness that marks 20th century. That is the defining feature of 20th century and of all modernist authors, not only the theater of the absurd, of all modernist authors. They begin from this point, this crisis of faith, this doubt. How to live a meaningful life, how to live a life of purpose, how to live a life how to live a life of purpose in a world where there is no God, where there is no karma phal, where there is no heaven, no promise of heaven, nothing. That is the crisis out of which theatre of the absurd is primarily emerging. That famous quotation, I was reading a few of the papers that I'm sure will be presented later. Someone quoted Ionesco, a portion of that famous quotation. Eugene Ionesco is one of the leading playwrights of the theatre of the absurd. That famous quotation, I think, says it all. Ionesco says, cut off from his religious, metaphysical, and transcendental roots, man is lost. All his actions become senseless, absurd, useless. So if we no longer have religion, if we no longer have metaphysical promises like heaven, like Param Brahma, if we can no longer believe in a transcendental signifier, which tells us what is right and what is wrong, and gives our life a purpose, all our actions, everything that we do, everything that we think becomes senseless, becomes meaningless. So that is the meaninglessness we are talking about when we are talking about the theater of the absent. I will try and tell you two stories very quickly. One of them many of you probably already know, the myth of Sisyphus. I'll come to the Sisyphus myth later, but I'd like to start with another one, a very interesting one, which is written by Franz Kafka. He is now referred to as an existential author, but he did not know he was an existential author. It was included in a novel as a part of a novel that Kafka wrote called The Trial. But the story precedes the novel and was published even before the novel was written as an independent story. It is a parable. It is called The Parable of the Gatekeeper. Parable of the Gatekeeper is, I believe, one of the most crucial points from which this notion of absurdity begins. The idea that I was talking about in Protestant Christianism and in classical Judaism, that we are human beings, we are all damned, D-A-M-N-E-D. We are all damned. No matter what we do, we cannot redeem ourselves. This idea has been a part of the Christian, particularly Protestant Christian theological history, as well as Judaism, Jewish theological history. The idea is that salvation is promised, transcendence is promised. বলা হচ্ছে যে না, হেভেনে যাবে, ট্রান্সেন্ডেন্স পাবে, জাস্টিস পাবে, তুমি যদি ভালো কর্ম করো সেই ভালো কর্মের ভালো ফল পাবে, এই লাইফ ডেথ সাফারিং এর সাইকেল থেকে মুক্তি পাবে বলা হচ্ছে, প্রমিস করা হচ্ছে। ইট ইজ বিং প্রমিসড, but it is not being delivered. It is a promise that is not achievable. That is what this idea that salvation is promised but never delivered is contained in this parable, small parable of the gatekeeper. You will realize, those of you who are reading Waiting for Godot or have already read Waiting for Godot, you will realize why I'm telling this story and why this story is so important, because this is being written around 1915, 1916. Kafka dies in 1925. So this is happening long before Beckett or Waiting for Godot. The parable of the gatekeeper goes thus, that a villager arrives at the gate of law, L-A-W, L capital. A villager arrives at the gate of law with the intention of meeting law, with the hope of getting some kind of justice. At that gate, the villager sees a mighty gatekeeper, a fearsome-looking gatekeeper, who stops him from entering the gate of law. The villager asks why, and the gatekeeper says it is not time. It is not right time. This is not the right time. So the villager asks, will the right time ever come? The gatekeeper says, yes, it might. You can wait. You can wait. And the villager starts waiting there. He asks every day, can I go today? Is it time? And the gatekeeper says, no, it is not time. The villager considers whether he will sneak in, run, and cross the gate, enter the edifice. The gatekeeper understands the villager's intentions and warns him that, yes, I understand that you want to sneak in, but please understand that beyond this gate, there are 10 such other gates. And each gate has a gatekeeper who is more fearsome than I am, who is even more terrifying than I am. So the villager realizes that sneaking in will not help his cause. So he waits. He talks to the gatekeeper. He tries to bribe the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper accepts the bribes. Days pass, months pass, years pass. The villager is waiting, asking every day, it is time. Gatekeeper says no. The gatekeeper accepts the bribes, saying that I am accepting the bribe just to make you feel that you have done everything that is possible in your capacity. You did not leave anything undone. But my accepting the bribe does not mean I'm going to let you enter. You can only enter when the time comes. Years pass. Now the villager is dying in front of the gate. The gatekeeper is still standing there, guarding. And the villager suddenly thinks of a question that he has not asked before. It suddenly occurs to him that it has been so many years he has been waiting, and now he is dying. But he has not seen any other, not even any other individual, come to the gate or approach the gate. So he's the only one waiting there. And he asks, why is it that no one else comes to this gate? And the gatekeeper finally gets up and tells him that now you are dying. I can tell you, this gate was meant only for you and no one else. This gate was kept open only for you and no one else, and now I will shut it. He shuts it. So this is the parable of the gatekeeper, which Kafka later included in that particular novel called The Trial. But do you see the parallel between the story and between what is happening in Waiting for Godot? Salvation is promised, but never delivered. So it's like that carrot that is being hung in front of the donkey. So, and the donkey moves forward, hoping to reach the carrot, but never reaches the carrot. The notion of a transcendental life, the notion of metaphysical promise is something like that. The story of Sisyphus is also interesting. Many of you already know. I'm just saying, repeating this for those who might not know. So Sisyphus was a king who was cursed by Zeus because he believed he was very arrogant, and he believed he was as intelligent as Zeus, and he cheated death twice. He cheated death twice, came back from death twice. And therefore, after his death, he was punished in Hades, in the underworld by Hades. The punishment is very interesting. The punishment is that he has to roll a boulder up a slope, up a steep gradient, with a promise that if he reaches the top of that slope, the top of that mountain with the boulder, he will be freed from the underworld. However, as these stories go, the boulder was enchanted. The boulder was enchanted by Hades. So as soon as the boulder was close to the peak, was close to the highest point, uh, in different versions, as soon as the sun sets, etc., etc., the boulder would roll down again, roll down and come back to its original position. This story, Albert Camus, another existential author, uses to kind of define the modern human condition. Salvation, once again, see the parallel, salvation is promised, but never achievable. What will Sisyphus do? What will Sisyphus do in such a circumstance? What are the options in front of him? Sisyphus can, of course, the easiest option, can give up, can go into a depression, like we do all the time. ওই হাত পা ছুড়ে ভেবেও করে কাঁদতে পারে, কাঁদতে বসতে পারে. It's because it is a, you can see it is an absurd situation, it is a meaningless situation. He is doomed, he is damned, he is doomed forever. Sisyphus এর ওই অপশনটা নেই, but Camus says suicide is, please don't think I'm advocating suicide, but Camus says suicide is a deeply philosophical stance in face to face with this absurdity. It is a protest that I do not want to live in this meaningless world. I refuse to accept this world which is without purpose and without hope. Or he can do what Sisyphus actually does. What Sisyphus does is Sisyphus takes this up as a challenge. Sisyphus knows that he is doomed. Sisyphus knows that there is none whatsoever chance of success, but he will not give in. He is a king. He will not give in. He wakes up every day, rolls the boulder to the top, as close to the top he can. The boulder rolls down back to where he began, and he starts again anew every day. Why does Sisyphus do that? Sisyphus does that as his protest. Just like suicide is a protest, just like or going into a depression is an effect when you are face to face with the absurd. Sisyphus's protest is that, okay, I will do just that. I will do just that, and that is my way of protesting against the absurdity of my condition. So this notion that transcendence is not achievable, heaven is not achievable, God is dead, success is not achievable, is what forms the basis of the philosophical basis of the theater of the absurd. In a novel much later written called Westward Ho, written, I think, if you are not too wrong, I'm bad with dates, I think it was written in the 1970s. Beckett writes these very famous words, these very oft-quoted words. Someone probably has quoted it in one of the papers. Beckett writes, "Ever tried, ever failed, no matter. Try again, fail better." I'm trying to connect all the narratives up. I'm trying to connect Ionesco's statement about mankind being lost in a world without the hope of transcendence to Kafka's beautiful parable of the gatekeeper, to the story of Sisyphus, to this statement by Beckett. There is an acceptance with which the absurd begins. The acceptance that there will be no success. That acceptance that there is no transcendence. The question is, what do we do? What do we do? How do we react? How do human beings react after that, post that realization? Okay, 30 minutes is already over. I will try and quickly wrap this up.
No, please continue. Please continue.
Yeah, hope I'm not boring, boring you guys. Anyway, so that is where it begins from. Now let me make a crucial distinction, and this distinction is absolutely crucial if you try to, and this is not my distinction, this is a distinction that Martin Esslin, the person who theorized theater of the absurd, made in the very beginning of his book. And this distinction differentiates between other existentialist literature, the literature of Kafka, Franz Kafka, the literature of Albert Camus, even to some extent Sartre as a philosopher, Sartre's notions of existentialism as a philosopher, and the actual practice of the theater of the absurd, with reference to Waiting for Godot. Or maybe Pinter, একটু Pinter সময় পেলে Pinter বলবো, or Stopper. If you read Franz Kafka, The Castle, beautiful novel, beautiful, one of the greatest novels ever written, or The Trial, which he never managed to finish. He never finished his writings. If you read Albert Camus' Outsider or The Play, or The Fall, সময় থাকলে গল্পগুলো বলতাম, একটু ছোট করে, সময় নেই, you will realize that the protagonist in most of this existential fiction, existential literature, are protagonists who have faced the existential angst, who have come face to face with this vacuum, this emptiness, this abyss, this dark abyss, a hole that was God, and they have managed to take the next step forward. So these are we call them existential heroes. These protagonists are heroes. They are heroic. They are heroic in the sense that they are like what when Beckett is writing try again, fail better, or when Sisyphus is deciding to push that rock up, knowing fully well that he will never succeed. He is the protagonists are like that. So they have negotiated with that emptiness, with that vacuum, and have managed to somehow move, Camus calls this the leap of faith, managed to move on to the next step. What is the next step? Moral action based on personal choice, based on personal responsibility. Theater of the absurd, for instance, I'll give you just an example. The protagonist of Play. What happens in the novel? Simple stuff. Uptown, It is being, all of a sudden, plague arrives there, bubonic plague. You know that, we know that bubonic plague did not have any kind of treatment at that point of time. So bubonic plague arrives there and ravages the town, and we have a doctor who is the protagonist, who is the central character in the play. There are many other characters. So the plague is a study of how people, and this is something we can relate to because we just, I know, I don't know whether it is over, but we just experienced a pandemic. So what a doctor will do, under these circumstances. The doctor have financial means to run away from there to save himself because he has a wife and a child in another town. The doctor can lock himself up in his own room and give up because nothing he does is going to help because he cannot save people. Or the doctor can do what doctors are supposed to do, treat people, knowing that it does not help. Just like Sisyphus rolling that rock up. Obviously, Camus' protagonist chooses to do the morally correct thing, his duty, his choice, his responsibility. He creates a group who goes around the town treating plague patients and that this is a futile attempt as much as the attempt of Sisyphus. Theater of the absurd. So that is heroic action. Theater of the absurd is slightly different. Theater of the absurd, especially in Ionesco, in Beckett, in Pinter, tries to put on the surface of us real people, men, women, not heroic people. Vladimir and Estragon are tramps. And see and try to understand how normal, real people behave under these circumstances of absurdity. We all understand that Vladimir and Estragon's situation is absurd. Godot is not going to come. Godot will never arrive. So it is an absurd situation. How do they behave? How do they react to it? Very interestingly, Vladimir and Estragon is disillusioned every single day. As Dr. Gupta pointed out, these plays have circular, cyclic forms. So Vladimir and Estragon are disillusioned every single day. Godot does not arrive. Godot never comes. And yet they cannot go. Yet they cannot move on. A truly heroic character, like Plague Doctor, would have realized that and moved on. A truly heroic character would have found some other way to make life meaningful. Vladimir and Estragon are stuck. That is the real human condition. As opposed to Camus is didactic. Camus is trying to tell you, just like Sartre in his Being and Nothingness, he's trying to tell you what we should do under these circumstances. Beckett, Pinter, Ionesco, they are showing you what we actually do under these circumstances. That is a crucial and essential difference. My favorite quote from Waiting for Godot are those lines which are repeated over, and I do not remember exactly how many times, repeated over and over and over again. One of them says, "Let's go," the other says, "No, we cannot." Vladimir asks why. Estragon says, "We are waiting for Godot." Vladimir says, "Oh yeah, yes." So they cannot go. Even at the end of the scene, they say, let's go, and do not move. This is a very interesting difference between existentialist literature, which is didactic and tells you how we are supposed to behave and how human beings behave. I'll finish just with a last story. It will take 2 minutes. Dante's Divine Comedy tries to imagine paradise, purgatory, and inferno. Paradiso, the book has three books, Paradiso, Purgatorio, Inferno. Paradiso is, we all know, Paradiso is heaven, fine. Purgatorio is the place where you are punished for the ওই ছোটখাটো খুচরো পাপ তো সবারই থাকে, হ্যাঁ, so you are punished for your খুচরো পাপ, মানে একটু গরম তেলে ভাজা হবে বা উল্টো করে ঝুলিয়ে রাখা হবে. But once your punishment is over, from Purgatorio you go back to Paradiso. Purgatorio is not hell. Inferno is hell, the last one. Why is Inferno hell? What makes Inferno so much worse than Purgatorio? Milton, I'm sure you have that in your syllabus. Milton borrowed his idea of hell from Dante's Divine Comedy, from Dante's imagination of Inferno. There is something written on the gates of hell. A simple statement, but that is the final statement. কি লেখা আছে? লেখা আছে, abandon all hope. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. That is why Inferno is hell. That is why Purgatorio is not hell. What is hell? Hell is the complete deletion, complete erasure of all hope. Once you enter Inferno, there is nothing beyond that. No transcendence, no freedom, nothing beyond that. That is the end. Inferno is the end point, the final destination. There is nothing beyond that. That is hell. So this is the story I will end with, because this is the story I wanted to end with, because now it will probably be easier to understand the predicament of Didi and Gogo, of Estragon and Vladimir. Gogo does not arrive, but they cannot give up the hope. They are stuck there. They are living in bad faith as far as existentialism is concerned. They are stuck there. There is nothing they can do except pass time, but they cannot escape because they give up hope. Giving up hope is entering hell. And not everybody has the courage of Sisyphus. Not everybody has the courage of Camus' doctor. Not everybody has the courage of even Beckett himself, who can write, try again, fail better. We do not have that courage to give up all hope. Yeah. Thank you. I think that should be it, more or less.
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
May I listen, sir? Hello.
Yes,
Yeah, I can.
Yes, sir. Sir, there is actually regarding absurd drama, definitely anti-character, anti-theme, anti-drama, anti-language, we know. So according to your story, according to your presentation, there is everything is well. So how can we establish
regarding these features: anti-character, anti-theme, anti-drama, anti-language. Please, sir.
Okay, so this is
Right.
a very good question, but I think the question answer session we have a section for that, and since we have a time crunch, please, Shobita Brutto, I will ask Shumit to remember this question that you made, and he
Okay, okay,
will,
okay, okay.
okay, with moderation, he will ask this
Okay, okay.
question again,
Okay.
and Professor Anindushan will be answering that to you. Okay, so thank you very much, Professor Sen, for this illuminating session. We were wishing we had more time. We genuinely had a good time listening to you. So now we come to the next part of our program, which is an interactive session where we have nine paper presenters. There are final year and ex students. They will read nine very short papers, and after reading the paper, they will seek the valuable suggestions of Professor Sen so that they can transform those short papers into full fledged academic works. So now I request Professor Shomajyoti Banerjee to conduct this session. Over to you, Shomajyoti.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, without further ado, I would like to welcome our first paper presenter, Debolina Dash. Debolina is a student of Prabhu Jagatbandhu College. She is studying English honors. Presently, she is in the 6th semester. I would now request Debolina to start her presentation. Over to you, Debolina.
Devendra, switch your audio on. Your audio is off.
Extremely sorry, ma'am.
Please continue.
Thank you
No
very
problem,
much,
sir.
ma'am. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, ma'am. Good evening to all our respected professors present here, all my seniors, my fellow mates, and my juniors. And a very good evening to our special resource person, Onindo sir. Thank you, sir, for taking your time out for us. I am Devalina Dash, a student of 6th semester English honors. It is indeed a great opportunity to speak in front of such persons of erudition. Today, I would be speaking on the topic titled Absurdly Anachronistic Waiting in Hamlet. I begin my paper with a quotation from Hamlet. I quote Hamlet, to be or not to be? That is the question. Vladimir, but that is not the question. What are we doing here? That is the question. Unquote. It is astonishing how we find this uncanny resemblance in the thematic portrayal of these two plays from two different periods. These two great literary works are brought on the common ground to be or not to be. Is it better to live or to die? For which Hamlet can definitely be considered as a harbinger of the theatre of the absurd, which portrays a man with existential anxieties. Hamlet's words still resonate today in the modern society and has its relevance in the present century because it echoes the basic problems of humanity. Is it better to live or to die? This crisis is well depicted in Waiting for Godot, where waiting has been dramatized for the elusive Godot. Hamlet, Vladimir, and Stragan are utterly struck by the mournful thought of to be or not to be, which sink them to the gulf of despair. This paper will focus on the sorrowful and dejected condition of human life in the present, the constant effort to make it fruitful, and not to commit suicide in the light of to be or not to be, as portrayed in Hamlet. Hamlet asks, which of the two alternatives is nobler? Whether silently to suffer the cruelties of fate or to put up a fight against the misfortunes of life? What prevents a man from committing suicide is the fear of what may happen to us after death. It is what makes us endure the ills and injustices of life. The soliloquy by Hamlet reveals the speculative temperament of him, irresolute and wavering mind, and his incapacity for any premeditated action. It also has a universal appeal because Hamlet is speaking for all human beings. There are occasions in every man's life when he feels a strong desire to put an end to his life, but he is prevented from doing so by several considerations, including those specifically mentioned by Hamlet. To live involves constant struggle against the travails that life throws at him, and he thinks momentarily that death, even through suicide, might bring a welcome sleep. Life is so unbearable that we would choose to end it if we were not afraid of what comes after. This compels us rather to continue to live, as bad as life may get, rather than risk the possibility that what comes after could be even worse or more of the same. Beckett's Waiting for Godot has been identified as a representation of human attitude and the meaningless absurdity of the human condition. The entire plot of the play centers on two protagonists, and they are waiting for the mysterious character named Godot and their failure to approach him. As can be seen in the soliloquy, it is obvious that Hamlet is overthinking and wavering between two different extremes, life or death. Here I quote: Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. I unquote. Likewise, in Waiting for Godot, it is obvious that Istragan and Vladimir are also overthinking and wavering between two different extremes, leave or wait. Here, they wonder whether they should wait for hope and hardship of life or leave the world in order to end the suffering. The very title of the play suggests its central theme, as Martin Esslin has pointed out. I quote again: The subject of the play is not Godot, but waiting. The act of waiting is an essential and characteristic aspect of human condition. Unquote. The dramatization of the theme of waiting in the play reminds us of the theme of delay in action which occurs in Hamlet. Here, the object of waiting may be an event, a person, or death. As we proceed along with the play, we see that throughout the play, Vladimir keeps on repeating that they are waiting for Godot. The theme of waiting, as the theme of delay in action portrayed in Hamlet, are scattered everywhere in the play. For example, Istragan, let's go. Vladimir, we can't. Istragan, why not? Vladimir, we are waiting for Godot. Vladimir, let's wait and see what he says. Istragan, who? Vladimir, Godot. Istragan, simply wait. Vladimir, we are used to it. Suffering is a permanent and constant part of human existence in Waiting for Godot, as portrayed in Hamlet. Every character suffers and suffers always, with no seeming resolution in life. Here, the hardships of life range from the physical to the mental, the minor to the extreme, like the theme of not to be in Hamlet. Thus, Istragan and Vladimir dramatize the theme of not to be as depicted in Hamlet, because they put the label of waiting for Godot on what is really just a systematic waiting for death. Even if they agreed to end it all and hang themselves from the tree, their attempt to do so ends in absurdly comic farce, with Istragan's trousers falling down. They may well make another attempt the next day, but one of the key messages of Waiting for Godot is strikingly similar to what we find in Camus: an ability to see the comic absurdity amidst the tragedy of living, and to go on despite everything. Another astounding literary work, which stands true to Camus' words and has also been compared with Waiting for Godot, is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead, an absurdist existential tragicomedy by Tom Stoppard. The predominant characters here, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, also unceasingly question their identity, environment, and what their believed purpose is. In the myth of Sisyphus, Albert Camus has given out the essence of his way of looking at life. That is, if success is unattainable, even after a series of strenuous attempts, the greatness of man always lies in the struggle itself, in the spirit of revolt that is manifested in the struggle. There's a stone that would slide down the mountain again and again, yet Sisyphus keeps on rolling that stone up every day. camouflages the attempt of Sisyphus. The struggle made daring. Similarly, in the scheme of things in the universe, the struggle is more important than the bleak end of failure. This is the only source of happiness, as he says, I quote, the struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Unquote. We can only be happy if we become aware of the absurdity of life and embrace it with all our strength. With this, here I would like to conclude my paper. Thank you all very much for listening to my paper and, of course, for your patience. Now, I would request my audience to kindly write the questions which they have for me in the chat box. I'll be happy to answer them later in the session. And now I humbly ask Professor Shen to kindly share his thoughts of my humble effort. Please tell me, sir, how did you like my paper and the areas which I need to work on to improve myself? Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
বলবো আমি? Okay, yeah. No, I remember going through a paper, and I loved the beginning. The two things. It is not easy to write a paper on waiting for Godot, primarily because so much has already been written. So there are obviously uh, repetitions. Uh, this idea that Hamlet might be a proto-absurdist play is not. I'm not hearing this for the first time. Hamlet is a very unique play. মানে অসাধারণ একটা জিনিস। কি করে যে লেখা হলো সেই সময়, মানে কারণ রিভেঞ্জ it is a revenge tragedy, right? So revenge tragedy has a certain format. For instance, when someone is wronged, that person comes back. There's a lot of violence. He takes revenge. There's a lot of blood and gore, etc., etc. Full entertainment, etc. And Shakespeare is writing a tragedy, a revenge tragedy, where the protagonist is spending literally 4 acts of the tragedy, even almost till the end point, not taking revenge, not planning revenge, but trying to figure out whether he should take revenge or not take revenge. Hamlet is an idiot, absolute idiot. Who does that? You take revenge or you do not take revenge. So it is a revenge tragedy completely turned on its head. Amazing stuff. And I understand the connections that you are trying to make with Waiting for Godot. Just 2 points. One, আচ্ছা, আমার in general ওই টেফারেন্সিং নিয়ে কিছু বলার ছিল, সেগুলো পরে কখনো বলবো আর কি, not so much important. 2 or 3 points for your paper particularly. The beginning, those 2 quotations that you chose, absolutely perfect, brilliant beginning. You will, if you are going to truly analyze this and draw the parallels, you will have to also point out that at the very end of the play, there is an absurd revenge that happens. Everyone dies in Hamlet. The same is true for that film adaptation, Haider. You need to keep that out, because the moment you bring that in, it no longer remains an absurdist play. The play is absurdist till the point Hamlet cannot figure out right or wrong, what is true, what is false, what he should do, what he should not do. It is almost like, and you're correct, it is almost like Hamlet is in the world of Ionesco, a world without God. And since it is a world without God, he does not know what is the right direction, what is the wrong direction. That is that one point. The end of it brings it back and makes it a revenge tragedy. So we can call it a proto-absurdist play. Not really an absurdist play, a proto-absurdist play from a different time, except the ending. And number two, this is something also I'll অন্যদেরও বলবো ওই শেষটা তোমার শেষটা where you are generalizing about life that we have to struggle like ওই রকম জেনারেলাইজেশনস গুলো আমার ধারণা we can মানে it's better avoided আর কি ওই জেনারেলাইজেশন আমার কাজ হচ্ছে টেক্সচুয়াল অ্যানালিসিস করা এবং টেক্সচুয়াল কম্পারিশন করা হ্যাঁ সেখান থেকে একটা হঠাৎ মরাল জেনারেলাইজেশন মানে that is a different kind of that's not the usual practice in a research work মানে we try not to say the final word perhaps দিয়ে বলি maybe this can be considered দিয়ে বলি final word না বলা মানে অ্যাভয়েড করাটাই ভালো এই দুটোই বেসিক্যালি আর স্পেশালি ওই we দিয়ে generalization যেখানে আমি করে আমরা করে generalization those are not the mode of a research paper otherwise তোমার পেপারটার শুরুটা তো আমার অপরূপ লেগেছে মানে ওই দুটো কোটেশন পাশাপাশি এত সুন্দর যাচ্ছে থ্যাংক ইউ
Thank you very much, sir. I will keep this in mind. I will keep all your suggestions in mind and work on the areas and improve myself. Thanks again, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable suggestions. And congratulations to Devolina for a successful presentation of your paper. Now, I would like to welcome our second paper presenter, Shohini Boiddo. She is an ex-student of Prabhu Jagatbandhu College. She completed her Masters in English from Jagatpur University. I would now request Shohini to start your presentation. Over to you, Shohini.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Hello everyone. I am
Yes,
Shohini
yes,
Boiddo.
carry on.
Okay, sir. Hello everyone. I am Shohini Boiddo. I am an ex-student of Prabhu Jagatbandhu College, and currently I have post-graduated from Jadavpur University. It's an honor to be here and present my paper among everyone. And thank you so much for creating such an opportunity for all of us. Now the title of my paper is Theatre of Absurd, the Psychological Dilemma and Continuing Relevance. The World War II was unlike any other war in general, primarily because its strong and long-lasting effect on human psyche. It altered the very fundamental belief system, shook the basic human bonds, and covered rational senses with an ambiguous helplessness. World War II conflict impacted and involved almost every continent in this world. During the period of 1930s and 1940s, and even later as well. After such a global hit run, people practically and spiritually went numb. A large section, almost all, caught in between a psychological dilemma. Because of its high capability of detaching people from their mental static core and placing them in a world full of uncertainty. So my paper will give light on the psychological aspect as well as the condition of the society at that period of time. Estragon, where shall we go? Vladimir. Yes, let's go. But they do not move. These lines aptly sum up the condition of post-World War II, where people wanted to move on, but ultimately they remained static, immovable because of the lack of their true desire to move, regenerating from a sense of losing all hope and faith for future. Although the war was stopped, still the underlying tension between the countries were very much vivid. The first few months of peace could not conceal the clear evidence of strength. And because of their Cold War remained present all through this resting period, there was no comprehensive peace settlement as it was in the 1990s. This back and forth movements and constant underneath state of fear, left with that empty spirit and great social depression, resulted as the inevitable aftermath of the war. The decline of the religious belief in 20th century, is partly responsible for the growing notion that life had no purpose, a world without any particular meaning. Especially in Waiting for Godot, we see a messenger boy every day promises the arrival of the ultimate power, but that never actually happens. And how Estragon and Vladimir prepare themselves every day only to meet the most powerful to redeem some solace for their troubled soul. Now, post-war world even blurs out the identity of individual and making them a loner and a terribly isolated persona on their own. In fact, in Beckett's masterpiece, though we see two central characters talking to each other, but they are not particularly establishing any sort of communication. In an attempt to clarify this radical movement, as it was termed as the anti-play during that time, Martin Aisling dubbed it as the theater of absurd. Now, very interestingly, the absurd somehow kind of points out that the absurdism. It kind of points out the negative impact. But according to the Aisling, it emphasized the absurdity of the human condition and echoes with the original meaning of being out of sync. Also, the post-war society portrays a cryptic binary. It was fighting and it was healing. It was moving, it was numbing. Theatre absurd stands amid this turmoil as the strong, independent emblem of an ambiguous illusion of going forward, but in reality going backward, ultimately reaching nowhere, remaining in the same immovable state of hopelessness and deep despair. Now, theatre of absurd is not limited to a particular era, primarily because it possesses some ephemeral quality that makes it still so relevant. In the contemporary era, we are mastering our world. Human racings try to decode everything in this universe. But the more we are earning, the more it seems we are losing everything. It's like we are moving without any limitation. It's like moving without knowing where to stop. And take a pause and breathe and watch our journey and to analyze how far we have come. Or even ask the greater question, are we even happy with this? During this worldwide pandemic, the psychological catastrophe emerged as one of the prominent concerns, along with the medical facilities. In current times, we stand like a forlorn existence with a bare heart and a highly dissatisfied soul. Psychologically, a sense of pure insecurity and a fear of losing derive from the biggest question: who would be truly there for me at the end of the day? And to avoid such answering, we have turned to materialistic pleasures. Now, Beckett in his masterpiece too never tried to fit in the typical conventional structure set by the society, but he portrayed true characteristics in its most naked way possible. Now, I'm going to be quoting Vladimir. We could start all over again. Estragon. That should be easy. Vladimir. It's the start that is difficult. Estragon. You can start from anything. Though this movement awake from a very disturbed time frame, but it holds a very important reflection of human beings in its most vulnerable state, which has successfully retained its immortal celestial approach for decades. Humans generally are a bunch of selfish and fearing selves, living in isolated in their own world, unless someone bright penetrates directly deep into their soul to free them from this bondage of self-obsession. Now, superficially, theatre of absurd can appear discouraging at parts, but beneath them, it teaches us a very poignant lesson about life, that there is hope amid destruction. Just do something that makes you alive and truly happy without any materialistic expectation. Because the more you will try to gather such false wins, the more you will distance yourself from the earthly truth, thus excluding the unnecessary and overcomplex plots can fill your soul with original joy and will bring yourself closer to your own real existence. To complete the ultimate cycle of life, you start where you ended things and you end where you started things, upholding the original roots of innocence in your heart while restoring the enigmatic power of universality for all eternally. So, so this was my paper. Thank you for all. Thank you for listening with patience to my paper. If you have any question, please let me know in the chat box below. I would love to reply to that at the later part of the session. Now, I really want to ask Professor Singh how he found my paper. Uh, it's a, I really want to hear your thoughts, sir, on my work. And if any area I need improvement, please suggest me that. I would be highly, uh, I'd be highly gratified of your replies. So,
Okay, yeah. So when I read your paper, নোট ডাউন করেছিলাম সহেলি বৈদ্য। আমি লিখেছি তার পাশে গুড পেপার।
thank you, sir.
কিন্তু I have just once again two issues, small issues. You are trying to, I think, do two things at once. Huh? You can consider it. Once again, this is not, I never say the final word. Huh? This is not any final statement, just my opinion. You are trying to do two things parallelly in the same paper. Uh, the first part of your paper is an attempt to contextualize theater of the absurd in its own time, which is the Second World War, post Second World War, and waiting for Godot. That part I understood, that part I liked. Uh, ওইটাই করা যেত, ওইটাই করা যেত, মানে bringing in other references, bringing in other texts, uh, contextualizing theater of absurd, and contextualizing waiting for Godot as a particular response to that post-World War despair and disillusionment. That could have been a complete paper. The second part of your paper, all of a sudden, out of the blue, you are saying that theater of the absurd does not belong to any particular time, where you are actually contradicting your earlier statement, and you are saying that there are universal truths and some ephemeral characteristics which makes it even relevant today, which I believe is a completely different paper. You have brought in pandemic and our experience of the pandemic, and you are trying to relate pandemic ke theater of the absurd এর সাথে relate করা খুব সহজ, কামুই করে গেছেন। প্লেগ যখন লিখেছেন কামু has already done it. হ্যাঁ, ওইটা খুব সহজ এবং খুব সহজেই করা যায়। So I think you are caught between two papers. Number three, I will just, because I'll repeat what I told Devolina also. ওই শেষের দিকের মরালাইজিং গুলো, হ্যাঁ,
Yes, sir.
ওইটা অ্যাভয়েড, ওইগুলো না, আমি আমি ইউজুয়ালি ক্লাসেও করি না, মানে ক্লাসে তো মরালাইজিং করাই যায়, কিন্তু চেষ্টা করি অ্যাভয়েড করার, কারণ অত কনফিডেন্টলি মরালাইজ করা যে মানুষ আসলে সেলফিশ, মানুষ আমি আই এম নট ভেরি শিওর যে মানুষ আসলে কি, অতটা কনফিডেন্ট নয়। এইটুকু।
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yes, yes. Have.
Thank you so much, Professor Sen.
Thank you so much for your valuable inputs. I'll keep that in mind, and also the last section of generalizing people. It was not intended to generalizing, but somehow I sounded it. Thank you so much for your inputs, and I will definitely improve my work. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks to you, Shohili, as well, for your nice presentation. Now I will welcome the next paper presenter, Joyatri Chatterjee. She is an ex-student of Prabhu Jagatbandhu College. She is presently pursuing her Masters in English from Vidyasagar University. I would now request Joyatri to begin her presentation. Over to you, Joyatri.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, you're audible.
Good
Carry
evening,
on, carry
everyone.
on.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. Greetings to all my fellow paper presenters, teachers, uh, present students, alumnus, and also greetings to Professor Onindo Sen, sir. Uh, we are very gratified and honored to have you amidst of us, and we are hoping to learn a great deal from you. Today, I'm going to present a paper uh, on the theater of absurd. Thank you to Indrani Chakraborty ma'am for giving me this chance to present this paper on this beautiful webinar, and thank you to all the faculty member of the Department of English, Prabhu Jagatbandhu College, for guiding me throughout the writing and presentation process of this paper. The name of my paper is The Society at Hand. Does the absurdity of pantomime ever end? Absurd. The meaning of absurd is widely unreasonable, illogical, or inappropriate. That is the beauty of absurd or absurdity, that nobody expects or nobody wishes for any explanation from it. That was the liberty that Samuel Beckett took while writing in Attenda Godo in 1950. My paper paints a bleak picture of a society gone completely impotent and desolate between two world wars, meaning the passage of time from modernity to postmodernity, from the hopes of certain restoration or a second coming to the bare minimum of living an existence. To showcase this declination of hope, I have chosen two timepieces of their own time. T.S. Eliot's Preludes and Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. That shows how the society has changed between the inception of 20th century to the post-World War II situation. In T.S. Eliot's Preludes, we see a vivid representation of images, scenes that the poet tries to relate to us, to show us, in order to express his feelings about that certain society that is gone completely materialistic. But on the other hand, in Waiting for Godot, we see a language that is completely, that is completely untrustable, if I say so. The failure of language gave birth to imagism. Imagism is the technique by which poets or writers show their feelings through images. Waiting for Godot was written after the aftermath of Samuel Beckett's experience in the battlefield of World War II. And that experience presented him with the understanding that there is nothing to express anymore. He writes, and I quote, "There is nothing to express, nothing with which to express, no desire to express, together with no obligation to express." Imagism, brought into life by the writings of Ezra Pound, LaForge, T.S. Eliot, was gone totally important after the two world wars. Like Vladimir and Estragon, whose entire existence depended highly on their interpretation of the audience and the readers. And there too, Samuel Beckett did not want to have the audience or the readers have an easy pass in interpretation. As we know that he has changed the script of Enatenda Godo while translating it into English. Both Eliot and Beckett, they have seen the cultural shock. They have experienced the cultural shock and desolation created by a materialistic society and the world wars. They hence their works as well depict those shocks that they have experienced in vivid and desensitizing details. They create narrators who are stuck in the infinite loops, doing the same jobs day in and day out. In Prelude, the poet describes in vivid detail the mornings, the busy mornings, the tired evenings, tedious, restless nights, and back. While in Waiting for Godot, we see Vladimir and Estragon waiting, doing the same jobs, eating turnips or eating carrots, fighting with each other, getting beaten by people. This never ends. And that makes these two pieces similar like a pantomime of time, a complete loop of time that these narrators are stuck in. They can't break out of it, they cannot do anything in it. In Preludes, we can see things are happening by the faceless doers. Things are done by the faceless doers. Nobody stands out. Nobody speaks up. Nobody is supposed to speak up. Like in Waiting for Godot, nobody is supposed to come. Nobody is supposed to go. Other than waiting for Godot or pass time in the middle. This is what happens in these two timepieces, in T.S. Eliot's Preludes and in Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. As Vivian Messier says, that Samuel Beckett creates anti-heroes. They are devoid of any tragic flaws. They never aspire, so hence they never fall. Even their basic needs are frustrated. Their minimum expectations are frustrated. If we really think about the society we are in today, if we really think the society at our hand today, we also have this really bare minimum needs to exist, don't we? The education, healthcare, place to live. In a godless universe, in the crazy political, socio-political scenarios, the loss of moral sensibility, we see Samuel Beckett writing Waiting for Godot, waiting for something to happen. And T.S. Eliot's Preludes and Waiting for Godot both shows that this society, after two world wars, or after the modernity, has become nothing but a mere pantomime where a person is what he chooses to be. A person is what the role he assumes to play. A person is just a mere player in a vacant auditorium, playing his mind day in and day out without a hope or without a wish of a clap or a person to see or listen to their discourse. The side-by-side study of these two timepieces shows that the post-apocalyptic society, that the humankind, the modern and postmodern human have inherited from Eliot, Yeats, and Beckett. Here the myth of Sisyphus has come true. The humankind is doing nothing but just rolling the rock back, rolling the rock over the hill, knowing fully well that it is bound to fall, and then rolling it back again. Here, living is to pass time, and the relationships are nothing but a way to find meaning in existence. Thank you very much for listening to my paper. If anyone have any questions, feel free to write them on the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer them. And now to Professor Sen. Sir, please do critique my paper and let me know what I can do to improve it.
Okay, so this is something I'm saying for everybody. কারণ একটা বিষয় হচ্ছে যে 3 মিনিটের রেসপন্স, 3 মিনিটের ফিডব্যাক নিয়ে তারপরে পেপারটা ভালো হয়ে যাবে, এটা হয় না। তো I am available. You can get in touch with me. Please ask Indrani for my number, and I'll be happy to help you turn these beginnings into full-fledged papers. That's number one. Tomake, Jayatri, that was a nice attempt at presentation, lecture presentation. There are a couple of things, and I like the idea of comparing Eliot to Beckett. There are a couple of things যেগুলো ওই মানে আমরা যখন পেপার লিখি একটু we have to be একটু এক্সট্রা কনসিয়াস হওয়ার প্রয়োজন আছে। হ্যাঁ, কারণ কয়েকটা জায়গায় যখন তুমি বলছো যে after 2 world wars, এই সেন্টেন্সটা শুনে মনে হচ্ছে যে preludes after 2 world wars. Because of the sentence construction, I'm sure you know that preludes is not after the 2 world wars. Waiting for Godot is. That's number one. Number two, there is a difference between what Eliot went through at that period, যখন উনি preludes লিখছেন বা যখন উনি ওয়েস্টল্যান্ড লিখছেন, that modernist angst that he is going through, that despair, that disillusionment that he is going through, and what is happening in Waiting for Godot, or what is happening with absurdist literature. The difference is that despite that despair, that disillusionment, with European culture, with the complete breakdown of European culture, the modernists, as in the early modernists like Eliot, they are not giving up all hope completely. There is despair, there is disillusionment, but there is also this sense that something new will come, something will happen. In fact, if you follow through, you will realize that that is also true for T.S. Eliot's own career. T.S. Eliot does not continue to remain in that despair and disillusionment. T.S. Eliot turns to religion, of all things. He becomes extremely religious, describes himself as an Anglo-Catholic in religion, royalist in politics, etc., etc. So T.S. Eliot just goes back there. Whereas with existentialism, there is this acceptance that Godot will not come. Godot is not going to come, and failure is inevitable. So there is a slight difference there. That is something I wanted to share. আমি লিখে রেখেছিলাম তোমার পেপারটা পড়ে, তাই বললাম। আচ্ছা, থার্ড পয়েন্ট হচ্ছে, if you must turn this into a full-fledged paper, comparing Eliot and comparing Beckett, especially comparing the despair and disillusionment that is there in Preludes and with Waiting for Godot, you cannot do it without bringing in Westland. Preludes বোধহয় সিলেবাসে আছে, Westland বোধহয় নেই, জানি না exactly, but Westland is such a crucial text that কারণ তুমি শুরু থেকে you have been using a very interesting word, and that word can become a potential connector. You are saying important, the whole idea of impotency. Uh, so if you really want to connect these two up, these two kinds of despair and these two kinds of disillusionment, you have to probably bring in Westland. That's my suggestion, just humble suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I will keep it in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sen, once again for your enlightening suggestions. And congratulations to Joyatri for such a nice presentation. Now, we will welcome our next paper presenter, Poulami Ghosh. She is an ex-student of Prabhu Jagatbandhu College, and she is presently pursuing her B.Ed from WBUTTEPA. So I would now request Poulami to begin her paper presentation. Over to you, Poulami. The online platform is all yours.
Good evening, everybody. Our respected principal, sir, and the other professors of Andul-Mouri Jagatbandhu College, and to the resource person, Professor Sen, sir. I am Poulami Ghosh, an ex-student of Andul-Mouri Jagatbandhu College, Department of English. And now I want to thank everybody of Department of English for giving me such an opportunity to be present here. And now I am going to present my paper, which is titled as Visual Sadness and its Role in Waiting for Godot. When the curtain opened in 1953, the audience was faced with a minimalist set with a tree and nothing else. The first sight of Inattendant Godot suggests its bleakest tone are presented by Beckett through visual sadness. The road in the play presents journeys and an option to travel away or towards something, and yet the characters don't move. We know nothing about how Vladimir and Estragon got to the road. All we know is that they are here at this road waiting for something to happen. It creates the atmosphere of that the human life has no clear beginning and, like the road, no clear end. And it suggests that we have an endless search, waiting, and a personal journey for ourselves. The tree with beard of leaves at the beginning portrays the world as barren or meaningless, lack of purpose. But next, it another prop with apparently monumental importance compared to the rest of the Westland stage represents hope and life, despite there being no hope and life ebbing away. Estragon and Vladimir contemplate about hanging themselves from the tree. While they are waiting for Godot, they also wait for the nightfall. There's also the appearance of moon as its appearance in the sky, which is the real signal that night has come and the men can stop waiting for Godot. Through his exploitation of language, Beckett also challenges the way humanity operates in and the world, and ultimately how this disjointed, confusing plot of the play parallels our place in the universe. In Waiting for Godot, one conversation that exploits the way humanity operates is, I quote, Estragon, we always find something, Didi, to give us the impression we exist. Vladimir, yes, we are magicians, unquote. The word magician carries the bleakest undertones because it carries ideas of illusion and trickery. Therefore, Beckett wants to portray to audience that we exist is actually a form of trickery, a skill which we have acquired over the years but is untrue. In conclusion, the visual sadness is supposed to symbolize the bleak and barren state of Gogo and Didi's world. Like their lives, the stage is also functional, minimalistic, and bland. However, the form of the play wonderfully contrasts with the content of it. It's about waiting, and not only waiting, but doing that with a gleam of laughter in their drab lives. In spite of knowing the fact that Godo is unreliable, he might never come, they don't get disappointed or discouraged. They considered committing suicide every day, but they reject the idea with undeniable excuse. Absurdists are rebels. They never yield to the silence of the ever unresponsive universe. Didi's world is stripped of memory, identity, community, and integrity. Instead, they have the end game of the losing side. Nevertheless, they don't quit playing. They play on till the game is on. Therefore, to sum up, it is this playful irreverence that undermines the sadness embedded in the structure of the play. A contrast so poetic that it's almost romantic. Probably that's the reason we can connect with these two tramps who are otherwise no similar to us. They continually challenges the visual sadness. It's the power of their spontaneous and jovial rebellion that connects us with them. In a way, all of us are rebels in an absolute world, irrevocably stuck and desperately willing to go on. Here, I conclude my paper, and thank you everyone for listening to me. And I request you that if you have any question to me, you can write it in the chat box. And now I humbly ask Professor Sen sir to kindly review on my efforts. Please suggest, sir, that how can I improve it further?
না আমার তোমার পেপারের টাইটেল আমার ভালো লেগেছে, কিন্তু তুমি যেটা তারপরে ফাইনালি বললে সেটা পুরোটা টাইটেলে রিফ্লেক্টেড হচ্ছে না। So maybe you need to rethink the title. That's number one. Number two, this is something I thought also in reference to, and I like what your basic point is that there is this disconnect between the visual sadness and the gaiety, the laughter of the two tramps. এটা খুব ইন্টারেস্টিং, এটা নিয়ে কাজ করা যায়। This is also something I thought of in connection with Devolina's paper. Devolina was trying to connect Hamlet and Waiting for Godot. So there's this famous saying which is oft quoted that history repeats itself twice, once as a tragedy and the second time as a farce. So yeah, see, so if you're connecting Hamlet and Godot, that actually becomes true. Hamlet is a tragedy and Godot is a farce. This farcical element, and Paulomike bolchi, this farcical element that you are finding in Godot, it has a history. I'm sure you can read up on it. It is not that Beckett is not doing this. It is not original in that sense. Beckett is doing that farcical the actions. He's drawing, while he's writing that, he's drawing from a very standardized tradition in of the Western stage called the vaudeville. তোমরা চার্লি চ্যাপলিন দেখেছো নিশ্চয়ই, হ্যাঁ, চার্লি চ্যাপলিন, the whole idea of that tramp. So Beckett is drawing from that vaudeville comedy, vaudeville farce tradition. So if you want to kind of take this paper further, you will also have to bring in that context, because যেই স্টেজে ভডেভিলস গুলো হতো সেই স্টেজগুলো কিন্তু এরকম বেয়ার বা এরকম স্যাড, ভিজুয়ালি স্যাড হতো না। সেই স্টেজেসগুলো ক্লাউডস আর কি, সেই স্টেজেসগুলো সার্কাসের স্টেজের মতো, খুবই ব্রাইট, খুবই চিয়ারফুল। সেখানে এরকম ফার্স হচ্ছে, আর এখানে এখানে একটা কমপ্লিট উল্টো ব্যাপার, মানে একটা minimalistic heap of broken images kind of western kind of staging এরকম একটা অদ্ভুত ফার্স হচ্ছে। That is a very interesting point that can be worked on, and
Tami,
you can take it forward.
I'm interrupting for 1 second. Please, please switch your audio off. There is very background noise. You cannot hear anything Professor Sen is saying. When you are speaking, you please switch your audio on. You can't hear anything.
আমি আমি বলে ফেলেছি, আমি আর কিছু বলার নেই। ওই ভডেভিলটাই জাস্ট ওই মানে ওই দ্যাট ফার্স দ্যাট শি ইজ টকিং, দ্যাট পোলম ইজ টকিং অ্যাবাউট, ইট হ্যাজ আ হিস্টরি, মানে ইট ইজ, বেকেট ইজ নট ক্রিয়েটিং ইট out of thin air. So if you must do this contrast, you probably need to bring that history in also. Where is Beckett getting this farcical content from?
Well, thank you, sir. I will definitely try to work on your points. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you, Professor Sen, and thanks to Polomi too for an honest effort of presenting your paper. I think you will remember whatever suggestions Professor Sen just gave you. So I would like to welcome our next paper presenter, Mithu Dash. She is a student of Prabhu Jagatbandhu College. She is studying English Honours. Presently, she is in the 6th semester. I would now request Mithu to begin her presentation. Over to you, Mithu.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
audible.
Mithu.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you. Good evening. Good evening to our honorable resource person, Professor Aninda Sen, and to all the respected teachers present in this forum today. And good evening to all my beloved seniors, juniors, and classmates present here. Welcome to my presentation. Let me start by saying a few words about myself. My name is Mithu Dash, and I'm a final year student of English Honours at Prabhu Jagatbandhu College. And today my topic is memory in Waiting for Godot. Throughout Waiting for Godot, Beckett uses memory as a means to tie up the deserted setting in the context of some kind of surrounding world, frequently undermining this anchor by presenting the past and the protagonist's reminiscence of it as being fragmented and unclear, much like Vladimir and Istrogan's existence in the present. The destruction of such a key element of human existence, memory, questions the significance of actions in a world where seemingly monotonous cycles of hesitancy render time itself almost entirely insignificant. Furthermore, throughout the play, Beckett links the depreciation of memory to the total deconstruction of the values that underpin traditional society. This time, subverting the commonly accepted notion of a linear timeline. Here I quote, Estrogen, what did we do yesterday? Vladimir, what did we do yesterday? Estrogen, yes, unquote. Beckett places his depiction of a malfunctioning human memory in a direct parallel to the protagonist's physical deterioration, suggesting that the circularity of human existence is as inevitable as the procedure of aging. Here again I quote Estrogen, giving up again, nothing to be done. Here, Beckett's use of the word quote unquote again, particularly in the first line of the play, immediately begins to suggest a wide context to the events depicted in the play. However, at no point does Beckett specify what this context might be, giving Estrogan's struggle with his boat an almost timeless resonance with humanity as a whole. The finality in the phrase quote unquote giving up seems entirely at odds with again, introducing the idea of humankind being trapped in an everlasting tussle, unable to progress even with the most pointless tasks while simultaneously being unable to give up. This ties in heavily with the overall theme of the limitations of a malfunctioning memory, rendering events meaningless as they blend together into a cycle of repetition. Additionally, the vague general connotations of quote unquote nothing to be done could easily be applied to a wider setting, highlighting the suitability of Estrogen's hopeless struggle as a metaphor for his life in general. However, the fact that such an appropriate symbol of human hopelessness comes in the form of Estrogen's comedic behavior adds another element to the opening line, deconstructing the famous notion of mankind's superiority and, in doing so, pointing out the base absurdity that often lies at the heart of human thought. This form of physical comedy can be seen frequently in the work of Laurel and Hardy, two popular comedians of Beckett's era. In referencing seemingly trivial aspects of contemporary popular culture, Beckett again places the absurd on the same plane as wider, more serious thematic elements and, by extension, reduces human attempts to understand the universe to mere farce. In this way, even from the very first line of this play, Beckett places futility at the heart of his presentation of humankind. In a play comprised largely in activity, Beckett's decision to place the active verb quote unquote done in the opening line serves to further this effect, creating a strong sense of stagnation and futility that remains strong throughout the duration of the play. It's clear, therefore, that through Beckett's presentation of memory in Waiting for Godot, he depicts the inevitability of recurring actions as old generations and their memories of the past give way to new ones. This repetition of is reflected in the post-war environment of the time as well as in the coming futility of Beckett's own setting within the play, giving his presentation of memory a firm grounding in reality. In this way, Samuel Beckett simultaneously laughs at and sympathizes with the idea that Vladimir and Estrogen's perpetual fight or tussle to make sense of their situation through memory is ultimately as ineffectual and incoherent at, as memory itself. That's all. Thanks everyone for your patience. I request my audience to kindly write your questions for me in the chat box, which I will be very happy to answer later in the session. And now I humbly ask or request Professor Sen, our honorable resource person, to share his thoughts of my humble effort. Please tell me, sir, how did you like my paper and how can I improve it?
I liked your paper. আমি পড়ে লিখে রেখেছিলাম গুড পয়েন্ট নাইস প্রেজেন্টেশন অলসো ওয়ান্স অ্যাগেন মানে ইফ ইউ ওয়ান্ট সাজেশন সি এক নম্বর বিষয় হচ্ছে এই মেমোরি নিয়ে প্রচুর কাজ হয়েছে, হ্যাঁ, মানে a lot has already been written. So সেইখানে if you are writing a paper, um, there are a few things that you আচ্ছা আমি একটু ক্যামেরাটা বন্ধ করে বলছি, হ্যাঁ। There are a few things that you need to probably bring in. Number one is that এই absurd theater-এর সময়ই এই that memory cannot be trusted, that memory lacks reliability, এইটা আরো অনেক টেক্সটে এসেছে এবং এই নিয়ে অ্যাবসার্ড থিয়েটারের লোকেদেরই মানে প্লে রাইটদেরই থিওরাইজেশন আছে, হোল ফুল থিওরাইজেশন। বেকেটের পার্সোনালি নেই, কিন্তু you will see similar issues of memory in End Game also. You will see similar issues of memory in Kraft's Last Step also. বাট থিওরাইজেশন যার আছে এই মেমোরি নিয়ে তার সেই ভদ্রলোকের নাম হ্যারল্ড পিন্টার। পিন্টারের সেকেন্ড হাফের নাটকগুলো, জীবনের সেকেন্ড হাফের নাটকগুলোকে they have a name, they are called memory plays, and they are based on this notion that memory is unreliable. So that is something you probably need to read up a little bit. And number three, এই এইটার একটা নাম আছে, এই যে মানে একটা শক্ত শব্দ, দুটো শক্ত শব্দ, জাস্ট বিকজ interacting with students is so much fun. দুটো শক্ত শব্দ বলি, মানে you can read it up in your own way. We call it ontological uncertainty and epistemological uncertainty. That is what plagues the world of waiting for Godot. Ontological uncertainty, ontology means the theory of being. So ontological uncertainty is uncertainty of being. মানে আছি নেই, কি করছি, who am I, where am I, that kind of an uncertainty. And epistemology means theory of knowledge. কোনটা জানি সেটা ঠিক জানি কিনা, ভুল জানি কিনা, কিভাবে জানি, এইরকম একটা আনসার্টেনটি। তো এই দুটো আনসার্টেনটি, অন্টোলজিক্যাল অ্যান্ড epistemological, they form the very crux of essence of Beckett's world in Waiting for Godot. Memory in Beckett, memory in Pinter literally becomes a competition of discourses, because you will realize that nobody remembers with enough confidence, nobody remembers the same thing similarly. So it becomes this is true for even our life to life everyday life experiences. So memory literally becomes a contested field of discourses, because we remember differently, we do not want to remember, we remember selectively, we forget selectively, এইসব মিলিয়ে। So this is a very broadly worked area. If you want to keep your focus just on Waiting for Godot, that will also do, but you probably need to read up a little on the background, on how the absurdist saw memory, how Pinter used memory, এই শব্দগুলো epistemological uncertainty, ontological uncertainty, etc. এইটুকুনি। Thank you. A nice paper. Me too.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your suggestions. I will definitely try my best to work up on your suggestions. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Sen, once again. And me too, congratulations to you for a successful presentation of your paper. Now, our next presenter is Howrah Shamanto. He is a student of Prabhu Jagatbandhu College. He is presently studying in the 6th semester of English Honours course. I would now request Howrah to unmute yourself and begin your presentation. Over to you, Howrah.
Thank you, ma'am, for introducing me. And very good evening to everybody present here. And a warm welcome to Professor Sen. And it is actually exciting and nerve-wracking to be able to speak in front of you. I will try my best to present my paper. And without further ado, I would like to start my paper on the topic, the romance in absurdism. Wordsworth once said in his ode, Intimation of Immortality, I quote him, there was a time when meadow, grove, and stream, the earth and every common sight, to me did seem apparelled in celestial light, the glory and the freshness of a dream. He continues the stanza with, I quote him yet again, it is not now as it has been for yore, turn wheresoever I may, by night or day. The things which I have seen, I now can see no more. The same kind of loss I suffered when I stepped into the grown-up world. The bright sunny day arises feelings of not a good start of a day, but start of a sweaty and unpleasant one. The night no longer has a sky full of twinkling stars, rather a pitch black darkness pervades now, which I have to sleep through to get the sun risen again, and again follow the same routine. In waiting for Godot, I can find the loss of the visionary gleam, but I cannot detest it for that, as it in turn shows the unbiased truth of the grown up world. The scenes of Vladimir and Estragon does not bend my mind in any particular direction, but it indeed eats up the celestial light that once apparelled my vision. The notion that we must do our deed without expecting anything in return is sort of disheartening. More so when from boyhood I was taught to study hard to get good marks and have a good life afterwards. To me, it seems to be traveling in a path without knowing any goal. But it is also true that searching for order in this unknown universe will only bring us closer to the conflict with the universe. This philosophy is aptly summarized by Albert Camus' statement: I want to speak only of a world in which thoughts, like lives, are devoid of future. Conflicted between realism and romantic idealism, Eliot's description of the night sky in his preludes does not make it hard to realize how it has lost its grace since my childhood days. I quote him: You dozed and watched the night revealing the thousand sordid images of which your soul was constituted. They flickered against the ceiling. We don't see any conflict in waiting for Godot. They are just waiting, not drinking life to the lees, but just waiting constantly. The waiting in waiting for Godot is simply meaningless where the characters does not know when will Godot come, if he came yesterday and they were absent, if they were supposed to wait for him today, if he has to come tomorrow. It is just a meaninglessly meaningful waiting for them. Their words and behaviors, without any exact purpose, tells us about the essence of human beings' existence. Nothingness is the essence. Theater of absurd shatters the starry night sky created by the romantics. It creates a black hole to suck in all the light that was present, to create a pitch black background for projecting its drama. The drama that shows the real condition of human life attuned to its theme and walks us through the crisis of human beings, the dissimulation of the society, the meaninglessness of the existence of the human being, and the isolation among people. Ozo says, I am perhaps not particularly human, but who cares? The fact that not being human is considered as so lightly by Pozo shines the spotlight on how much a human being is cut off from his religious, metaphysical, and transcendental roots. According to me, this drama is about Atma Darshan or identification. It is not a drama of characters, but a theater of soul, where the essence of human soul has been brought out in a spotlight, just as Tagore did in his play Daghor, where the oil lamps were blown out and the starlight was allowed to enter the room after Amal died, as lights from the lamp will only illuminate his body, but the starlight will illuminate his soul. To conclude, the absurdist point of view filters out the exaggerated beautification of the life and shows us its disillusioned truth. It does not intend to invoke a sense of despair in our heart, rather a sense of acceptance with all the chaos and pointlessness. It is all about living in the present, undaunted by the fear of future. It's true, we loved the blissful idealism unleashed upon us by the romantics. It was reassuring like theism. However, absurdism, with its blunt yet hopeful lucidity, also remains a refreshingly poetic perspective to me. So, with that, I would like to conclude my paper for today. And if anyone has some questions regarding my paper, they can type it in the chat box. I will be answering it later on in the session. And now I request Professor Sen to kindly share his insight and thoughts about my paper and how I can improve it in the future. Thank you, sir.
Yours was the first paper that I read. I've realized that you are you are basically a romantic and you are just sad. You are very sad that you are having to write a paper on waiting for Godot. Uh, interesting. Okay, so no, jokes apart, I will. Number one, I think you already know this because I have said this before. Uh, uh, what you have written, and I'm talking about conventions. আমি ঠিক ভুল বলছি না, ঠিক ভালো খারাপের ইয়েতে যাচ্ছি না. What you have written is more of a personal essay. It is not a paper. It's not an article, not an academic paper. You have written your personal responses uh, to your reading of Waiting for Godot. সেই জন্য you have continuously used first person pronoun I আমি করে. হ্যাঁ, ওইগুলো আমরা ইউজুয়ালি করি না, ওই রকম ডিরেক্ট অ্যাক্টিভ ভয়েসে লিখি না. যদি সেই কথাটাই বলার থাকে ওটাকে ঘুরিয়ে একটা প্রিটেন্ড অবজেক্টিভিটি অ্যাটেন্ড করি, যদিও অবজেক্টিভিটি হয় না লিবারেল আর্টসে, এভরিথিং ইজ সাবজেক্টিভ বাট উই প্রিটেন্ড টু বি অবজেক্টিভ. So if you want to turn this into a full-fledged paper, number one is that you'll have to, following conventions probably you'll have to cut out the personal essay tone because it reads like a personal essay. Number two, that there are some slight gaps in the in understanding also probably কারণ when you are saying যে it's a theater of the soul or Atmadarshan or when you are bringing in Tagore particularly, you are actually you are doing it from the very beginning, when you are bringing in Wordsworth. Because these two are completely two different points of ideologies. Please, if you kindly try to understand what I am trying to point out, is that when Wordsworth is saying, I used to see that gleam, that brightness, and it has gone missing. I cannot see it anymore. Wordsworth is not saying that that gleam, that brightness is not there. He is saying that he cannot see it anymore because he has grown up in experience in this grown-up world. But it is there. It is there. That transcendental truth is there. That metaphysical promise is there. Similarly, the moment you say soul, you are basically saying that a soul is there, which is essence, right? But absurdism literally goes against that. Another three-word explanation of existential theory is this: that existence precedes essence. The whole idea is that we do not have a soul, we do not have a pre-given soul. So ওইখানে একটু conceptual understanding একটু problem আছে, but still if you want to develop this as a paper, Uh, yeah, we can think. You can think about it, but a personal essay টোনটাকে বাদ দিতে হবে. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your guidance. I will definitely work on those areas. Thank you, sir, yet again.
Thanks to Professor Sen, and congratulations to Howrah for such a nice presentation of your paper. Hope you will remember all the phenomenal suggestions that Professor Sen has given you just now. So now it's time to welcome our next presenter, Dishika Dash. She is a student of Prabhu Jagatbandhu College, studying in the 6th semester of English Honours course. Now I would request Dishika to begin her presentation. Over to you, Dishika.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes,
Audible,
perfectly audible.
audible. Yes.
Good evening, everybody. It's our pleasure to have Professor Onindo Sen sir among us, and I'm very much thankful to all my respected professors to give the chance to me to present a paper in front of him. I am Dishika Das, and I'm presenting a paper on the fear of loneliness in Waiting for Godot. In Waiting for Godot, Samuel Beckett portrays the psychologically traumatized conditions of individual in a new world order created by Second World War and capitalism. One of those is loneliness. Through the characters, Beckett develops the theme of loneliness. The French title, En attendant Godot, literally means while waiting for Godot in English. So basically, the play is not about what Godot signifies, but what Trumps do while waiting for him. If we find it difficult to find meaning in the action or dialogues, it is because we are too waiting for him. And without his arrival, somehow we feel that the action lacks meaning. That is precisely the message of the play. Godot is not a destination to be reached or a reward to be added. He is simply an invention that helps the trams to get busy. If one is busy, the time appears to go by quickly. If one is idle, it goes by slowly. The tragic element in regards to time is that Vladimir and Estragon spend the entire course of the play waiting around for another man to distract themselves from the fear of loneliness. Somehow, the two characters are dependent on Godot, and they expect that his arrival may change their situation. But ultimately, Godot doesn't come, and the absence of Godot leads to meaninglessness of life and loneliness. We notice that Vladimir and Estragon take the decision of committing suicide to escape from the enemy of life, but they can't because of their fear of being alone. We also see that the other two characters, Pozo and Lucky, are tied together literally. But Lucky remains with Pozo due to a possible fear of being alone. All he because although Lucky is seen as a slave, he in his own power can make the decision at any given time to leave Pozo. Loneliness is a condition of feeling negative about our own company, and therefore requiring other people to fulfill that inner lack. Vladimir and Estragon have complementary personalities, arguing that each fulfills the qualities that other lacks. Vladimir represents the mind, while Estragon symbolizes the body. Throughout the story, Beckett presents Vladimir as intellectual who is concerned with various philosophical and theological problems, and Estragon is more concerned with bodily pleasures and materialistic gains. So they are dependent on each other and have a fear of losing each other. We can also see loneliness from two perspectives. One is negative, which creates a psychological distress, and the other is positive, which gives us an opportunity for growth. Through which perspective we see the loneliness is is always depends on us. There is a famous quote in John Osborne's Look Back in Anger. I quote, "The heaviest, strongest creatures in this world seem to be the loneliest," unquote. But in this play, it is a psychological distress for Vladimir and Estragon that leads them to give up their capacity for individual action, and they stick together doing nothing. Throughout the play, Beckett suggests that people should overcome their existential worries through solving the problems of life, rather than believe in illusions that leads nothing but despair and loneliness. We can relate it with the myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus, where Sisyphus is condemned to roll a rock up to the top of a mountain, only to have the rock roll back down every time he reaches the top. Sisyphus has to continue performing his punishment and life in loneliness. But when Sisyphus accepts his fate, however, the sorrow and melancholy of it vanish. To conclude, we can say that we have to accept the problems and overcome without depending on anything. That's all. Thank you for your patience. And now I request my audience to kindly write your questions in the chat box, which I will be happy to answer later in the session. And I request Professor Singh to share his thoughts of my humble effort, and sir, please tell me, how did you like my work and how can I improve it further?
I like the idea. I like the idea
Thank you, sir.
of, yeah, I like the idea of loneliness as মোটিভেটিং ফ্যাক্টর। মানে এইটা নিয়ে আরো নাটকের মধ্যেই আরো অনেক আছে, মানে দেয়ার আর ডায়ালগস ইফ ইউ রিড, আমি মন থেকে কোট করতে পারবো না, বাট ওয়েন দে আর কন্টেম্পলেটিং separation, going away from each other, but they cannot go, they feel tired. মানে Pozzo and Lucky are literally tired, but there is no rope tying Vladimir and Estragon, but somehow or the other they are tied uh, due to their common fate, or as you said, due to their due to their personalities which complement each other. The idea is nice, it can be worked on. ভালো, যেটা আগেও বলেছি আবার রিপিট করছি, ওই যে লাস্ট লাইনে একটা মডেল অফ দ্য স্টোরি, ওই ছোটবেলায় গল্পের পরে একটা মডেল লেখার প্র্যাকটিস করাতো না, হ্যাঁ ওইটা ওই রকম, ওইগুলো আমরা পেপারে ইউজুয়ালি অ্যাভয়েড করি, মানে দ্যাট মডেল ইজ নট নেসেসারি। তার আগে তুমি যেটা বলেছো সেটাতেই বোঝা যাচ্ছে কি বলছে। আর আরেকটা জায়গায় আই কাইন্ড অফ স্লাইটলি ডিসএগ্রি উইথ ইউ, ইউ ওয়ান্স এগেন ইউ ক্যান বি রাইট, আই ক্যান বি রং। ওই সেকেন্ড লাস্ট সেন্টেন্সে তুমি যখন বলছো যে বেকেট আমাদের এই করতে বলছে, বেকেট ইজ টেলিং আস দ্যাট উই শুড not depend on illusions, and I don't think Beckett is didactic at all. Mane, he that sounds once again like Beckett জ্ঞান দিচ্ছে. I think Beckett is more interested in describing what he sees as the human condition. কি করতে হবে কি না করতে হবে সেটা বেকেট জানলে বেকেট নিশ্চয়ই নাটকে লিখতেন, ঠিক যেরকম বেকেট বলেছিলেন না, আমি যদি জানতাম গোডো কে তাহলে সেটা আমি নাটকেই লিখে দিতাম, ওই রকম। সো ওই ফাইনাল ওয়ার্ডস, ওই মডেলাইজিং গুলো যদি মডেল স্টোরিটা বাদ দেওয়া যায়। তাছাড়া দ্য আইডিয়া ইজ ভেরি নাইস, ইন্টারেস্টিং, লোনলিনেস ইন ওয়েটিং। থ্যাংক ইউ।
Thank you so much, sir, for your suggestions, and I will definitely try my best. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. And also thanks to Dishika for such a good presentation. Now our next presenter is Sanjoita Ghosh. She is a student of Prabhu Jagatbandhu College, presently studying in the 6th semester of English Honours course. I would now request Sanjoita to unmute herself and begin her presentation. Over to you, Sanjayita.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Good evening to everyone. I'm Sanjayita Ghosh, student of final year English Honors. My topic for today is Guppy Bagha and Gogo Didi, Fairy Tale and Unfairy Tales. Samuel Beckett wrote Waiting for Godot on the base of the absurdity of the modern world, where life is full of uncertainty. This play has two main characters, and they are two tramps, Gogo and Didi. This play opens with exhausted Estragon sitting on a low mound is trying to take off his boat, and the opening dialogue by him is quote unquote nothing to be done. This word is nothing is the keynote of this composition. We can find many absurd, meaningless, and funny incidents in the action of the characters. Along with this, we may find the shadow of Goopy Bagha's fairy world in the world of Gogo and Didi with some differences. The life of Gogo and Didi were not so joyous or glorious like Gopi Bagha, as they were not the member of any fairy land. Gogo and Didi belongs to a world where everyone constantly trying to survive with a heart full of hope and despair. Gopi and Bagha were also the tramps, just like Gogo and Didi, and they lived in a fairy world. They were happy with their lives as Bhutir Raja blessed them with their wishes, and this blessing solved their all problems. They tried to help the people with their magical power. Kupibaka's world is one of kind where goodness wins over the evil and the people live a happy life ever after. Their lives were not so complicated or uncertain. They did not have any sort of frustration or despair from their lives. But Gogo and Didi are the members of today's world, which is an unjust and chaotic one. In this world, there is no order or harmony. Frustration, boredom, despair, loneliness, suffering gradually swirling the people's life. In Gogo and Didi's uncertain world, people don't have their own country, home, even the memories of yesterday. Their life is precarious and chaotic. In this unstable and undefined world, resourceful people get beaten almost every night for obscure reasons. Even people get dumb or blind overnight, just like today's king is tomorrow's fakir in this funny world. And this is so relevant and true. This is not only about the economical condition or downfall, this is about the situation. Although these are unconceivable for us, but this is the exact reality of today's world. Nowadays, we all are witnesses this kind of absurdity, which is a war, and nothing cannot be so much meaningless than a war. This war is between a superhuman and a teenager. This death game changes the situation overnight. People are getting separated from their homes, schools, colleges, workplaces. People lost their family, friends, parents lost their children, a wife lost her husband, a sister lost her brother, even a dreamer lost his or her dream. People are getting maimed, blinded, homeless, refugees overnight. But this absurdity must go on to quenching the power thirst of some power mongers. These all are hers, maybe seem like a story, but this is true. Despite all this uncertainty, suffering, despair, one thing kept happy Gogo did it along with us, and that is hope, because the power of hope is so strong. This hope is the only thing that keeps connected Gopibaga's fairy world with Gogo Didi's unfairy world. Gogo and Didi were waiting for a Bhuted Raja in their world, Godot, for that solution because they believe that he is more powerful and capable existence for solving their problems. The way Bhutir Raja blessed Gopi Bakha with their blessing, they are also waiting for such a blessing. Throughout this composition, we see that Godot never comes. Even we are not sure that Godot really exists or not. Gogo and Didi were also not sure when Godot will come or not. After being disappointed many times, Gogo Didi does not give up their hope and carried on their waiting for Godot. They are hopeful that everything would be okay at the end, just like a fairy tale. This waiting and hope is not only Gogo and Didi's, this is for us who lives their life in this
uncertain yet beautiful world. I conclude here. Thanks everyone for your patience. Now I am requesting to my listeners, if you have any question for me, please write down in the chat box and I will try to answer all of this later in the session. Now I am humbly asked Anindor sir to share his thoughts or critique on my work.
Your paper came to me without a name, Sanchoita. I did not know you were the author. Uh, I, I loved it. I loved the idea. I do not know where you got the idea from. I loved it primarily because I have never thought of it. And yet it is so obvious. I never connected Giddy and Gogo with Guppy and Bagha, but they can be connected because they are both traps. Both the pairs, they are trapped. And it never occurred to me that Godo can be Bhuter Raja. So, once again, if it is your original idea, I can only congratulate you. Your paper is simple, straightforward, and I think it can be আরেকটু লিখতে হবে হয়তো একটু বাড়ানো প্রয়োজন কিন্তু it is perfect. It is otherwise it makes complete sense. This fairy world and unfairy world, and the fairy world is a fairy world because there is a Bhuter Raja, and the unfairy world is unfairy world because the Bhuter Raja is absent. Uh, that makes perfect sense. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you so much, sir. I will try my best. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you so much, Professor Sen, and thanks to Sanchoita as well for a nice presentation of your paper. Now it's time to welcome our last paper presenter, Gaurav Kole. Gaurav is a student of our college. He is presently studying in the 6th semester of English Honours course. I would now request Gaurav to unmute himself and begin his paper presentation. Over to you, Gaurav.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes,
you are.
carry on. Carry on.
Okay, ma'am. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. My name is Gaurav Kole, currently pursuing my bachelor's degree in English Honours from Prabhu Jagatbandhu College. Today, in front of you, I would like to present my paper. The title of my paper is The Absurdity of the COVID-19 Pandemic with reference to Waiting for Godot and few other absurd plays. The plot of Waiting for Godot is rather straightforward. Vladimir and Estragon, two friends, are sitting by a road under a tree waiting for Godot, who supposedly promised to meet them there. They sit and wait. However, when I realized how similar Vladimir and Estragon's waiting is to our situation with the pandemic, waiting is, it struck me. As we waited for things to quiet down, the days flew by. Weekends were no longer a reality, and we had to check our calendars to tell the difference between a Sunday and a Monday. We processed years worth of insane news in just few months. In the play, time has been presented in a cyclic manner by Samuel Beckett, where we see Vladimir and Estragon engaging in a series of repetitive activities while waiting for Godot. This recurring pattern of events can also be seen very famously in Albert Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus, in which Sisyphus is shown as endlessly pushing a rock from the bottom of the hill to the very top, only to see it fall again due to a curse given to him by Zeus. This nature of repetitiveness is incredibly similar to our situation during the pandemic, where our situation was soon taken over by desperation and futility. Each day, the virus kept growing severe, and simultaneously, the lockdown period kept getting extended, which forced us to indulge ourselves in a similar repetitive state of futility. Each morning, we woke up hoping for a new sun to rise to get us back to things like they once were, back when we were free. But soon enough, the harsh reality of the situation crushed our hopes with Camus' words from his novel, The Plague, echoing loud in our ears. I quote, "No one will ever be free, so long as there are pestilences. Unquote. In Waiting for Godot, we see Estragon and Vladimir wait for Godot just because at a certain point of time he promised them that he would come, and therefore they consider this task of waiting for him as their only occupation, as nobody told them to do anything else. Similarly, in myth of Sisyphus, due to Zeus's curse, Sisyphus' only task was to push a rock towards the top of the hill, no matter how many times it falls again. And he did that with a smile on his face, therefore accepting the absurdity of his situation, which we can also see in another very famous absurd play, this one written by Tom Stoppard, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, where we see Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are facing their inevitable death due to the situation they have found themselves in, but yet they still manages to complete their responsibility, which was to deliver a letter to the King of England, which was soon followed by their execution. Likewise, our situation during the lockdown period was quite similar, wherein amidst all the uncertainty caused by the virus, all we could do was follow the guidelines and do our job. To sum up, absurd plays such as Waiting for Godot, The Myth of Sisyphus, and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead not only draws a parallel with our situation in the pandemic, but also provide us with a way to cope with scary situations like a pandemic, as Albert Camus puts it in his novel, The Plague. I quote, "What's true of all evils in the world is true of plague as well. It helps men to rise above themselves." Unquote. This perspective empowers us to deal with pandemic by accepting the ridiculousness of life. Simultaneously, we feel that, like Sisyphus, we must constantly revolt against it by completing our duties and responsibilities, rather than dwelling upon the fact that we don't belong here. As like war, nobody belongs to a pandemic. It is what Gogo and Didi most emphatically tell us. We don't belong, and yet we must stay on. Thus, with that, I would like to conclude my presentation. I want to thank everyone for their kind time and attention. Now, I ask my audience if they have any questions regarding my paper, please kindly submit it in the chat box, and I will answer it in a later session. And now I kindly request our honorable resource person, Professor Singh, to share his thoughts regarding my paper and kindly let me know the areas I can improve upon. Thank you, sir.
Uh, okay, so I can tell you what I would do if I was writing this paper. I understand the Rosencrantz Guildenstern Are Dead reference, because yeah, that kind of fits in. Of course, Camus' plague is literally a pandemic. Uh, just two things. I know it might not be a might sound a little abrupt, but I would probably from this paper regarding pandemic and um, absurdity, I would probably keep Waiting for Godot, because Waiting for Godot is slightly difficult to fit in with this pandemic ideology, pandemic notion. I would just write this paper with reference to, and it will be a good paper. I will I will I think I will write this paper with plague and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and an analysis of the current pandemic situation and what we went through. That is the first point. And the second point is something I have already told Saurabh. That part when you are talking about pandemic, the beginning of your paper, that sounds more like personal essay uh, about your personal experience. Uh, Maybe you can think of rewriting that portion, not making it so personal, not including the I and we, etc. Otherwise, the paper with plague, current pandemic, and Rosencrantz makes sense. Thank you. That's my suggestion.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable suggestion. I will try my best to improve it further.
Thank you so much, sir. And thanks to Gaurav as well for your presentation. And once again, I would like to thank Professor Anindo Shane for patiently listening to all our paper presenters and guiding them with his valuable and insightful suggestions. Now, with that, we come to the end of this paper presentation session. Now, I would like to request Professor Shumit Kumar Bar to kindly moderate the question answer session. Over to you, Professor Bar.
Uh, Shumit, are you here? I think he just left the meeting. Probably there is some technical
I think
difficulties.
Shumit sir is facing some
Yes.
internet issues.
Okay. Anyway, I start with the question and answer session. I think he will join. So I begin with.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. So the first question is to, let me check. Yes, the first question, Joyatri Chatterjee. His question is to Professor Sen. So she says, Joyatri, student of post graduation in English, she asked, Sir, Russell Brand recently said that the society is failing. As more people complain about being mentally sick, it becomes clear that they are living in a society they are not supposed to be. What is your take on this statement?
Okay. Yeah, I read that. I came across that Russell Brand comment. Was not expecting it here. প্রচুর প্রশ্ন দেখি আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে হবে Russell Brand is probably more interested in the critique of capitalism, and that is a line that has often been taken. That is not a very new line. So Russell Brand is not saying it for the first time. We have often connected mental illness, depression, and all kinds of other mental illness with the rise of capitalism, uh, and the idea is that we are not living a life that is natural anymore. We are living in such an artifice. So if you want to connect it with absurdity, you can, but I'm not sure Russell Brand is trying to say, trying to come from that same position where we are accepting that there is, absurdists, existentialists are accepting that there is no essence of life, there is no meaning. Life is essentially purposeless, and then moving on to make meaning out of it through choice and responsibility. So yeah, that's my response, if that makes sense.
So I can see Shumit is here. He has joined. Please, Shumit,
Yes,
continue.
yes. Actually, there was a kind of internet
Yes,
problem.
yes.
Instantly, I was just out, and now. So, thank you all the paper presenters, and it's uh, so it's time for further question and answer. There are lots of questions in the chat box. The second question is from Priyanka Mondol. Priyanka is a student of our second
Fourth sem.
fourth semester, and
Hello, Sumit sir. I have observation. I wish to share.
yes, I'll come to you, SG sir.
Okay, okay.
You have a
Join in
question.
or
We have also noted your question. Uh, Priyanka has asked our resource person, Anindo sir. Priyanka quotes here: "If karma comes back, she considers is absolutely baseless, and her question is whether it is a weapon to bound someone being reckless or to stop him or her from being a threat to society? That is a question to you, Professor Anindra Sen, from Priyanka.
Yeah, 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 thank you. Okay, I'll just take see, the idea is one of I think I mentioned it, but oh, I forgot. One of the reason we have these grand narratives of religion is that without those grand narratives, it is very difficult to explain suffering and death. For instance, even today I was reading this article where apparently this child, young child, has asked the Pope as in the Pope in Vatican, Pope, that if there is a God, why would he or she allow sexual abuse of children? I do not clearly remember the answer the Pope gave to that question or whether he answered it at all. The question is important. Suffering and death are something we need to explain. Otherwise, it is difficult to explain why a child who has done nothing, to no sin, has committed no sin, suddenly dies a horrible death in an earthquake or in a war. And different religions explain it differently. Abrahamic religions, usually like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, usually explain it with the reference to original sin. So even though the child is not sinful, they carry the burden. They are born with the burden of the original sin, which is Adam and Eve disobeying God's orders. So we are all essentially sinful. Hinduism and other classical religions, where there is a concept of rebirth and reincarnation, explain suffering and death differently. They explain suffering and death with the relation of karma. So that is where karma comes in, karma and কর্মফল। তো তুমি এই জীবনের কর্মফল কিছু এই জীবনেই পেয়ে যাবে, যেইটা বাকি থাকবে হিসেবের খাতায় সেটা পরের জীবনে পাবে। So that is why we use karma. Now these are all grand narratives that we have, if you ask me personally, my personal opinion, we have made up to make sense of this world, which otherwise does not make sense. Absurdists would say that, existentialists would say that this is all constructs, these are all imaginary constructs, and we live in a world which is basically essentially meaningless, purposeless, unjust, and absurd, and we need to accept that and move on.
Okay. So thank you, Professor Chen. Now there are questions from our students, but before that, as our faculty member, Professor Shobita Ghosh, just asked you at the beginning of our session, if I'm not very wrong, he mentioned about anti-character and anti-language in the absurd drama. So if it is your observation, Professor Ghosh, so I would like to.
Apart from this, I have more one.
Okay.
Actually, sir, I want to say you, existential regards humanism. Most of the places, it's my opinion, majorly humanism disregards absurd drama, in my opinion. But I wish to seek your opinion in this respect. Second point is that most of the post World War drama, especially World War II, I mean, there is lack of God or goddesses or out of God in respect of literary presentation, and based on leader and leadership. My point is there, why is it happened, such kind of incident in respect of literature? Please seek your suggestion or opinion. Sir, please.
Thank you, Professor Ghosh. These are very serious and deep questions, and it would probably take. I can just give you my personal opinion, and in very short. I don't know whether that will satisfy you. So, as far as the second question is concerned, this mm, growth of atheism and this, uh, what should I say, this the edifice of religion crumbling is not something that is merely happening after Second World War. It has started long back. It has started in the Victorian crisis of faith. We see it in Tennyson. We see that same crisis of faith in Memoriam, for instance. And it has started with Galileo even, when Galileo said that whatever he said. So and can be traced back even before. So religion and science is coming into conflict. Religion and new knowledge is coming into conflict. That is one of the reason. And the two world wars obviously played an important part, and they kind of they were so horrific that I believe God was no longer enough to explain that kind of suffering, that kind of violence, that kind of inhumanity. So post-World War drama, as you say, they are much more secular in that sense. They are non-religious in that sense. So that is a general growth of atheism that is happening for a long time in European culture. Uh, about your first question, I forgot your first question. I'm sorry. If you can, please repeat it.
Please unmute
Your mic is off. Your mic is off.
Professor Ghosh, your mic is off. Please unmute yourself first.
অডিওটা অন করতে হবে অডিও ইজ
Existentialism regards humanism, but regarding post Second World War drama or literature, I think majorly, I mean, lacks of humanism.
Yes.
Literature lacks of humanism.
Yes.
So there is a contradictory matter, I think, to this show. What's your observation?
Yes. I remember the question now. Yeah, you are actually correct. That's a very correct observation that humanism faced a crisis. I'm not saying that humanism ended there, but it faced a major crisis after the two world wars. And existentialism, which talks about, which begins with the notion that we live in an absurd world, may sound anti-humanist from certain perspectives, but I would like to suggest, if you can consider this as my opinion, that with Sartre, the way, the path that existentialism takes, it kind of goes back towards a humanism itself. It is not the same humanism where you believe that Manu Samriter Shantan. It is not Vivekananda's humanism or Leonardo da Vinci's humanism, but it is a humanism. Sartre would say it is a humanism based on acceptance of a certain set of truths, and the truth is that we live in an essentially meaningless world.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So I hope Professor Ghosh, you have received the answers. Now we move on to the questions asked by our student paper presenters. The first one is to Debolina. Debolina, yes. Devanjana asked you if it is true that nothing or less than nothing happens in waiting for Godot, how is it that we manage to be entertained as the audience or readers? So this is your question from Devanjana.
Okay, that's a really nice question, Devanjana. Yes, it's absolutely true that nothing happens in the play, but that's the entire point, right? It's exactly like her life. The play suggests the absurdity and nothingness of our life, and that too in an explicit way. So in it, we can also see that there is no plot, no conflict, and no climax as well. So this barrenness brings a post-cathartic effect, a sense of liberation from pity and fear. Maybe that's also fun to have as the huge fandom of Waiting for Godot proves. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Debolina. The next question is to Shohili Boiddo. Shohili, are you here? Shohili?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Shohili, Pallavi, uh, he has actually, she has two questions. Pallavi has two questions. First one is to you, and the second one is to our resource person. Um, Pallavi, Pallavi's question is that how would life feel from an absurdist point of view? I repeat the question: how would life feel from an absurdist point of view?
Okay. Uh, hey, Pallavi, this is such an interesting question. And it is a question that requires a very lengthy discussion. But yes, on a shorter note, for an absurdist, life seems a place of absolute dullness. It's a place of absolute meaningless. It's a place of absolute purposelessness. It's a place of absolute without any ultimate motivation. Now, in reality, when people do something, there's sort of motivation. But since for an absurdist, there's no such thing as a future, therefore, for him, there is nothing such a motivation for an absurdist. For him or her or for any other, for an absurdist, the idea of identity and the idea of belonging are very much blurred. It's a kind of internal depression which cannot be extracted, by the by the outer layer. So to sum up your question for the answer, for an absurdist, the life seems a place of absolute void and absolute dull, a place of absolute hopelessness and helplessness. I hope I answer your question. If you need anything else, you can definitely contact me. I would love to further discuss things with you. Thank you so much for your question.
Sure, Didi. Thank you. Thank you so much for your answer.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thanks to both of you. Professor Shen, Pallavi has a question for you too, and she wants to know what is the last absurd thing or idea that come in your mind? Pallavi wants to know from you, sir.
I don't know. Is that a personal question? I do not know how to respond to that. If it is a personal question, uh, I I live in the midst of absurdity. Uh, but I will just take this one step forward. I and because we were doing waiting for Godot, the idea of existentialism does not end with absurdity. It continues to notions of choice and responsibility, and which Sartre brings in his theory. So, for instance, I will tell you exactly how I feel. The contradiction here. The contradiction here is that I am crucially aware that I, in the cosmic perspective of things, I, as Onindo Sen, I am as important as a cockroach. বেসিক্যালি আরশোলা এত মানে একটা আরশোলা ঠিক যতটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ আমিও ঠিক ততটাই গুরুত্বপূর্ণ আই অ্যাম I do not deny that. I accept that as truth. And yet, I choose to believe that when I go to a class and teach my students, it makes some difference. It is a meaningful act. At the end of the day, it is probably as futile as Sisyphus rolling that boulder up the rock, up the hill. But for me, in that class, in that space, it makes sense. And therefore, I do it with as much authenticity, as much honesty as possible. Okay, that is my response. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I feel so good after hearing your answer.
I hope Pallavi, you got your answer from Professor Shen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Uh, the next paper presenter was Joyatri. And Joyatri, can you listen to us now? If you are present here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Joyatri is here. Joyatri, Rohan Ghosh of second semester. Rohan wants to know from you what separates the theater of the absurd from the existentialist theater. I repeat the question: what separates the theater of the absurd from the existentialist theater? So,
Very, yeah. Am I audible?
yes, you are.
Very, very interesting question, Rohan. See, the existentialist theater and the theater of absurd both shares the same philosophy of a meaningless life that continues in a void. But the existentialists shows these meaninglessness of carrying on with life, the void, with reasonable plot structures and um, explainable characters and so on. But the absurdists, as I said in the beginning of my paper, that uh, they do not leave any place for the explanations, for their plot, characters, or anything at all. The absurd comes from the lack of explanation or from the unwillingness to express anything with language or anything other than that. So yeah, that's my answer. If you want to know more about it, feel free to contact me. Thank you.
So,
That's a
Rohan,
good answer.
Thank you.
yes,
Thank
sir,
you, sir.
please, sir, please.
No, that's a good answer. I just said that's a good answer.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. The next question is to Polomi Ghosh. Polomi,
Yes, sir.
uh, regarding your paper, Kuheli wants to know how does the theater of the absurd reflect the spiritual climate of the particular age? That's the question from Kuheli.
Well, Kuheli, thanks for listening and question. Thanks for your
The
question.
sound that দেখো the sound
Actually,
আসছে
sir, am I audible?
Yes, you
audible
are.
but একটা sound আসছে একটু দেখো check করতে পারো
ওটাও কিছু
Professor
করার
Ghosh,
ওটাও
actually, Professor
ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ডে
Ghosh,
আসছে।
she has the background of some outer sources. The sounds are from outside. She cannot stop it at present.
প্লিজ কন্টিনিউ।
Well, really, actually, absurdism came out of post-World War disillusionment, frustration, and some of pain. Therefore, it reflects the chaotic absurdity of human life, human mind. It was without faith, without God, and without meaning. It's reality on the face without being real. So, in short, we can say that absurdism reflects an age that was in revolt with itself. Okay, so if you know more about that, you can easily contact me. Okay, that's my answer.
Thank you so much for Rumini for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Well, Polumi, thank you for your answer. Now, the next paper presenter was Mithu, and Mithu read a paper today on memory. But Molika wants to know from you, Mithu. Are you present here? Yes, Mithu is here. Uh, Molika's question to you is: what is the conflict of waiting for Godot? If I'm not very wrong, the question is: what is the conflict of waiting for Godot?
All right, sir. Malika, thanks for your great question. Malika, actually, in the conventional sense, absurd play doesn't have any conflict. But since it's open-ended, we may say that the pointless struggle of human life against absurdity is the basic line of conflict in an absurdity play. Okay, Malika, thank you.
Okay, Mithu. Next question is from Kuheli, and Professor Shen. Kuheli Hajra is our student of second semester, and she wants to know from you: how did Edward Albee introduce the theater of the absurd in America?
Uh,
Perhaps it takes a lot of discussions here regarding the
no,
introduction of
no,
absurd theater
yeah,
in America.
yeah, no. I think I'll pass this question at this point. Yeah, see, Edward Albee is who is afraid of Virginia Woolf? Mm, Edward Albee, because otherwise, theater of the absurd is predominantly an uh, European thing, European happening. And Edward Albee is actually one of the exceptions. And American existentialism uh, kind of differs. There is a very essential difference uh, from the European version of absurdity and existentialism. And the primary difference, and once again, as I said, this can be a very long list. The primary difference is that the American existentialism is not a direct product of the war experience. So it is much more of a philosophical position rather than rather than the despair and disillusionment that you see in the European plays of that period, in Pinter or in Beckett or Eugene Ionesco or Diogenes, whoever, the kind of angst that you see. I think that is missing in LB. LB is much more intellectual in that sense. He is approaching it more as a philosophical problem to be sorted out, to be solved. That is my opinion, in short.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. We have
Thank you, sir,
some
for
other
sharing
questions.
your valuable thoughts regarding my question. Thank you so much.
Regarding this, we would be uh, fond of hearing of on this topic, sir. But we have some other questions, and if time permits, we would like to come back to that point. Next, Saurabh, you had a question from Niladri, and Niladri wants to know from you how the concept of absurdity is related to human existence. So over to you, Saurabh.
Yes, sir. Actually, Nilatri, that is a wonderful question. And actually, the human existence itself becomes absurd when we realize the fact that the universe remains indifferent to our suffering, the pointless monotony of human labor, and the finality of death. But the concept of absurdism has not been laid down to mm, to invoke a sense of despair in our heart, but to urge us to fight against all the odds, though we know that the final victory is not ours. Thus, absurdism is not only related to human life, it is the human life. So I think that answers your wonderful question. Thank you for the question again.
Well, thank
Okay,
you,
Saurabh.
Saurabh, responding to my question.
Now I move on to the paper of Dishika. Dishika today read on loneliness, but Antara Dirghangi of our second semester, she wants to know what makes theater of the absurd unique. So, Dishika,
Yes, sir. That's a good question, Antara. Thanks for asking. There is no plot, no realism, no character development in the theater of the absurd. Meaningless structure, meaningless language, and the repetitive actions are used. The structure of the absurdist play is in circular form. There is no climax. Nothing happens. And in that sense, we say that it's a drama that's without drama. And I think that is probably the most unique point of the theater of the absurd. That's all.
Okay, thanks, Dishika Di, for answering my question.
Welcome, dear.
our next question was asked by Priyanka. It was perhaps her second question, and this one is to Sanchoita. Do the absurdists believe in destiny? So, Sanchoita, would you like to comment upon it? Her
Yes,
question
sir.
is, do the absurdists believe in destiny?
Yes, sir. Priyanka, thank you for this question. The outspoken answer of your question is no. Actually, absurdism does not believe in any pattern. Life is so meaningless for that person who believe in absurdism. So, when life is meaningless, then how can anyone believe in destiny, which is completely unknown because who sees tomorrow? So, moreover, they don't believe in tomorrow. They can wait for it, but if it seems like today, they don't mind. So they are not that type of person who believes in destiny. Priyanka, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dee, for your valuable reply.
Now we move on to the question of Onusri Mondol. Onusri asked Gaurav, and the question is there any similarity between absurdism and Buddhism? I repeat the question, is there any similarity between absurdism and Buddhism?
That, thank you, sir. That is a very good question, Anushri. Thank you very much for asking. The similarity I think between the two would be that both are atheistic in nature, and both have a certain degree of belief in Stoicism, and but there are differences too, such as the major difference would be that Buddhism is a religion and absurdism is a philosophical idea. But also in Buddhism, there's a belief that there is a reason for sorrow, while in absurdism that is not necessary. The reason is not necessary, and um, unlike in Buddhism, there is no state of nirvana in absurdism. As Camus says, death is an abuse. So to answer your question, yes, there are some. I believe there are some similarities between absurdism and Buddhism. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you, Gaurav. Um, now
With the last question,
to
it is having
question,
some
yes,
problem with the last question, as I said. And
Professor
the last
Shen.
question, reading out that it's to Professor Anindu Shen. Which is the best approach to live our life? As a nihilist, existentialist, or as an absurdist? So I think you have to generalize.
No, no,
We
no, no,
should.
no, 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 no. That is a perfect question to finish. Is that the last question?
Yes,
is
this
a
is the last question.
that is a perfect question to finish with because I get to tell another story. Small anecdote, many of you know. This is an anecdote usually associated with Sartre. So, as you know, Sartre, Camus, they were part of the French resistance movement during the Second World War, when Germany, under the leadership of Hitler, had occupied Paris. Paris was under German occupation, and Camus, Sartre, they went underground. They built an underground resistance, and actually participated in the Second World War in order to defend Paris. Paris was important for them because Paris at that point was basically the center of the European cultural world. And the story goes like this, in that apparently a young boy wrote a letter to Sartre. And I have been talking about choice and responsibility over and over again. So this story should be a perfect finish to it. Apparently, a young boy wrote a letter to Jean-Paul Sartre asking him a question. The question was that my mother is unwell. I need to look after my mother, take care of my mother. My motherland is unwell also. My motherland is under German occupation. Uh, and I need to choose. I need to choose between my mother and my motherland. Uh, who should I serve? Who comes first? Who should I serve? My mother or my motherland? I do a lot of, I usually have a lot of fun with this story in the class because I ask for responses. Now we do not have the time. Sartre's answer is crucial. Sartre's answer is crucial in understanding existentialist choice and responsibility. Sartre writes back to this young boy saying that anything I ask you to choose will be the wrong choice. Any choice you make and take the responsibility for will be the right choice. So absurdism, nihilism, surrealism, structuralism, essentialism, postmodernism, I do not know. I will not live that life. I can only talk about my choice. I cannot tell you about your choice. You have to make that choice. You have to read it up. You have to make that choice and take responsibility for that choice. That is true existentialism. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shen. So, with the discussion of Professor Shen, our question and answer session ends, and now we now we request our HOD ma'am to announce for our valedictory session.
Shomisha, you are live.
Yeah. Thank you, Shumit. And thank you, I say. A very, very warm welcome to all of you. And it's my privilege to be here on behalf of English Department of Prabhu Jagatbandhu College to offer a bouquet of thanks and bouquet of regards to our distinguished guests, respected principal sir, and our special resource person, keynote addresser, Professor Anindo Sen. Actually, I was in an enthralling session. Beckett might have said, nothing happens, nobody comes, nobody goes. It's awful. But to us, it is wonderful. We all assembled here, we all participated, and we are enlightened by our learned sir who addressed a really, really enlightening keynote speech on absurdism. We are really, really thankful. But at the very onset, we should offer our deepest reverence to His Holiness Prabhu Jagatbandhu for bestowing us this seat of learning, this wonderful piece of learning on the banks of Saraswati River for nurturing our young budding minds for the future ahead. And at the same time, my due regards to our dear principal sir, who is almost a catalyst, making us, inspiring us, encouraging us in all our endeavors for making new journeys in the webinars, even in this pandemic. Our sincere thanks to our IQC coordinator, Dr. Arnav Gupta sir, and a special thanks for his lively interest in our topic, in our subject too. Thank you, Arnav Gupta sir. And with folded hands, I would offer my humble gratitude to Sir Professor Onindo sir, a renowned academician who just enlightened not only with his critical and entertaining and endearing approach. That is a novelty. We really have to fathom further to explore the critical idea of absurdism. We are in a thought-provoking session. No, it's not awful. It is really wonderful. We are even taught the message of salvation and taught even the theory of Amritosho Putra. So it is almost an unending journey with him, and many, many thanks for his critical insight. I would further extend my thanks to our HOD, Indrani Chakraborty, aptly called IC. Really, she is always, oh captain, my captain in our department. And with a role of almost provoking interest in selecting this nice topic, and with her enthusiastic approach in final orchestration of the events of this webinar, she duly deserves a warm thanks, isn't it, Shumit? And I would also take this
Yes,
opportunity,
yes, of course.
of
Yes,
course,
really.
I would also take this opportunity to extend my warm thanks to all our dear students and learned faculty members who are here always to offer hand-in-hand approach to go together in this webinar. But special thanks to our dear budding minds who are so electrical in their approach, who are never nervous, who presented their papers, but at the same time, with their undaunted spirit, even asked ourselves to fathom further deep into the topic, to explore more and more. Actually, education is not the preparation for life. Education is life itself. And through this much long-awaited webinar, we are almost face to face to unearth the belief who we are, from where are we going, to what ends danceth the universe. And Sir so aptly said that almost in his final wrapping up, it is your choice. Yes, it is our choice in this blessed earth to make our journey for our salvation. With my due applause, warm appreciation, I profoundly express my deep regards to you all for being with us to make this event a memorable one. Namaskar and thank you.
Namaskar to you, sir.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Shravishwari, I think I must interrupt and include one last name, that is Kullan.
Yes, yes,
I
I
told you
said.
without whose help we wouldn't have made this. So thanks a lot to Kullan. Shravishwari, will you please mention?
Yeah, definitely. And there is also our close vigil, and with his meticulous devotion, he is almost the sentinel of our valued self. And really, I'm sorry for his valuable contribution for making this webinar seem alive. Light of the day. Thank you, IC, for reminding me, and thank you all once again for being with us to share our feelings together. Thank you all. Namaskar.
So thank you all. We had a great session. Goodbye and good night. I think that's it.
Indrani,
Thank you
regarding
for this lovely
regarding the,
opportunity for us. Thank you
will
so
there be
much
any
for
announcement for certificates?
Yes, students, you will get your certificates. All the participants will get your certificates in your email after you fill up the feedback form. That will be sent to your email. Okay, by half an hour.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Fill up the feedback form.
All of the participants are requested to just click on your link, fill up the form, and submit it in the stipulated time. It will be mailed to you.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, finally, thanks to everyone for staying with us so long. I can see almost all of us are with us. We have 69 participants with us till the end, which is a feat itself, which is an achievement itself. And all the thanks goes to our resource person and all. So thank you very much and good night. Hope to see you again.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Wish you all
Thank
the
you,
best,
sir.
our participant, our
Thank
students.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night to all of you. Bye.
Bye.
স্যার চলে যাওয়ার পর তুমি ওটাকে অফ কর। স্যার যতক্ষণ ছিলেন তুই আমাকে অফ করে দিবি।
না আমি পুরো অনই ছিল পুরো ভিডিওটা লাস্ট অব্দি